That didn't happen.
They just ended.
Yes. There's a little detail. And also, they probably left their homes or whatever they left, knowing that at this hour, there isn't much traffic.
Yep.
And that's why they chose it.
Yeah.
And then on that particular day, this lorry does what
happens.
The lorry does what the lorry did.
And it affects, it tells you something that is about our road network and our transportation and management of our transport system.
And alternatives that may
An alternative, yes.
Because if you're stuck on this road, what do? Where do you turn?
You're completely stuck.
Or unless you want to go back and go to industrial area.
Yeah, if you look at everybody who's before General Motors could turn in and get into Enterprise Road, okay? People who are beyond City Cabanas could get into the flyover, get into Outer Ring Road to take you into Jogoo Road or into industrial area, and you'll find your way into town. But it appears like none of those options was also working. That was a...
it brings in a concept that I think we'll touch on later. It's planning. Because planning actually doesn't revolve around roads. It revolves around people, their numbers, and then their usage of the roads, and everything else that applies to the livelihood of these people.
Yeah.
So when you know very well and you've got a pattern as to how your population is going to increase, planning is supposed to take this into account. And when you say population increase, it means also an increase in traffic. Yes.
Crazy. Welcome to the show. Today we'll be discussing a number of things. One, we'll revisit the heated debate on the viability of the Nairobi National Park as real estate commercial enterprise or an ecological conservancy
Or
many other things. We'll also be looking at what the NARC Kenya party leader raised yesterday, something that has been raised before, but also let's give her a voice and hear what she has to say about management of COVID-19 response mechanisms, from funds to planning to execution of everything. She came out yesterday guns blazing and she was like, you know what, this government has failed, basically. They have just simply failed. Also, today is International Youth Day. So salute to all the youth. We will be talking about that, the International Youth Day. Youthful Senator for Nairobi County, Johnson Sakaja, will be speaking to us later in the day. But let's begin where we always begin. And fellow Kenyans, without reagents, how many tests have we?
Well, let's look at the cases that we have as of yesterday. 419 new COVID cases, bringing the total in the country to 26,928. Unfortunately, so far, 423 have died. But with good news, 13,495 having recovered. So there's still an issue with testing in the country. Now the reagent story has popped up out at us. And it'd be interesting to see now how that carries through. Still less than 400,000 tests done around the country.
And our excuse is that we don't have the
reagents.
So our testing is basically just...
Those who had a delay for 10 days, probably that delay now is looking a little bit more than that.
Yeah, you
and
go
then
through
there's
an
the
entire
question,
24 days and they tell you, that time we tested you, you had COVID.
So, but the
Let's
thing
test
is,
you again.
Because now there's a problem about the viability of the samples having been taken and probably have to go through the nice rigorous process all over again. So those are issues being dealt with. If you had been waiting for your test results, likelihood that you will not get them and that you'll be asked to come in and have another sample taken. Yes. So just under 300,000 cases recorded around the world yesterday, taking the number to 20,249,553, with 738,726 deaths. 111. Okay, good grief. 13,113,231 deaths around the world. I'm sorry, recovered around the world. Okay, I need to get my numbers and my brain together this morning.
So 13 million, right?
13 million recovered
And several
cases.
hundred thousands.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the United States now 5,251,446 cases with 166,000 deaths. An increase of 10,000 cases in South Africa between yesterday and today. Yesterday we were at 552 cases, now at 563, with 10,621 deaths. They had looked at a place where we know also, yes, testing is rigorous, but we know also that they had said they were not recording quite as many cases as they were previously, but what they were concerned about was the deaths. But now we see that the cases have increased. Mexico still continues to increase in its number of cases, now looking at almost 6,000 cases in the last few hours, and just over 10% of those resulting in death having been reported. So looking at the cases of COVID-19 around the continent, with South Africa leading, and the numbers that we've been given most recently, that about 20 million cases, and now looking at a number of deaths on the continent, but still in comparison to what we've seen before, it doesn't it doesn't match the fear, or it doesn't match the anxiety in terms of what then would happen on the continent. So in as much as the cases we see are quite a lot, comparatively so, still relatively low numbers in Africa.
How are those countries coping? Remember the countries that had the higher cases, the sub-Saharan African countries that had the higher cases.
So we're
West
looking
Africa, Ghana, Nigeria.
Yeah, so we're looking at South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and then we go down to the countries then that have in the 20,000s, such as Kenya and Ethiopia and South Sudan. So coping seems to be coping. Majority of these cases continue to be asymptomatic cases. Quite a number, unfortunately, of significant deaths. But those numbers that we're looking at, for no country have the deaths passed 10,000. Even South Africa, we see it now, just crossed 10,000. Just
10,000 deaths.
Yes.
And worldwide,
the deaths worldwide are 730,000.
Infections?
Infections, 20 million.
Plus.
Yes.
You know, what is interesting is if you look at something else that COVID has brought to the fore, we have universities that are known or have a reputation for excellence that is above that of other such institutions. COVID seems to have put pay to some of those reputations. For instance, in this race for the vaccine, you don't hear of Harvard. You don't hear of many of the Ivy Leagues. The
Ivy Leagues actually are not very big on medicine, right?
No. And they are supposed to be the hubs for innovation. Johns Hopkins has come to the very, very fore. But Oxford, on the other hand, is still leading. You hear of universities like Southampton. Ordinarily, you don't hear. And then, of course, you hear of collaborations that people have and the various stages that they are at with their findings and their testing. But then something else has come in. There's the discussion of what you call vaccine nationalism. The countries that seem to be able or seem to be almost close to providing a viable vaccine, say like India, have something called a huge population, 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
So now the debate arises, when the vaccine is available,
shall we sell it to others or shall we use it first?
We are 1.3 billion, yes. And that discussion is continuing. And one of the points that has been raised by people who've been involved in this discussion is perhaps you need to look for a country with a small population, perhaps a city-state, Singapore, maybe Vatican, so that even if they use the vaccine for their population, there'll be a lot more available for the rest of the world. So I'm simply saying this discussion has come to the fore. And then there's also a discussion that now Donald Trump has introduced. And that discussion, for people who are in the research world, it spells doom in this sense. They're saying, given that we've tested it on human beings at a certain level, we should just carry on and use it. And they're saying, but if what if it doesn't work? Now, those are the phase 3 trials. What if it doesn't work with a large population? Can you imagine the danger that you'll have caused?
It would have caused, exactly.
Yet China, that comes to the fore, they have gotten to a point where it's not even just testing. They're actually using some of their vaccines on the military, meaning they've gone to that phase 3 and they've pushed it. So some of the universities and institutions that were known to be the trailblazers in some of these, COVID somehow seems to have. Yes.
Well, these institutions, though, big on medicine.
Yes. Harvard Public School of Medicine. They all have
On public health, actually,
big.
right?
Yes, they're all big on these things. Big. Big in terms of one name, big in terms of funding, big in terms of research, big. And they were. But COVID seems to have, should we say, call them out.
Yeah, totally. Just basically, yes, the T.A. Chan School of Public Health, right?
Yes. Oh, it's a big place.
Okay, so if you want to look at those numbers again, I know we're going to take a break, but, comparative to the rest of the world, 20 million cases on the globe. And of those cases, less than 10% are on the continent of Africa. So 1,050,000 cases in Africa, 735,000 deaths in the world, and 23,000 of those are on the continent. So again, well under 10%.
How is that graph looking, though, in terms of new cases and new deaths
For the
over
continent?
the last couple of
Well, it definitely is.
over the last couple of months?
It's definitely on an incline because it has increased over time. We also and if we look at for the continent, South Africa has contributed to this because there was that surge. So the numbers from South Africa alone contributed to the spike that we saw in the graph for the continent. But yeah,
And it represents the danger
it does.
that, it's really still possible for that number to move significantly and
Actually,
drastically. Just
it's
changes.
actually spot on because the thing about COVID is that your neighbor's well-being is just as important as your own.
As your own.
Yes. This isn't one of those things where you can be insular and just think, let's look after ourselves.
No.
No.
In this case, you want everybody to be on the same page in
Yes.
terms of care and protections when it comes to something like this.
17 minutes after 6, let's take a look at the weather and then we start a look at the big stories of the day. Quite a number. And of course, we are also expecting the big vote in the Senate today. Another motion of adjournment, probably. Good morning. This is a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, our live stream is up as well. www.spicefm.co.ke.
The weather with Spice FM.
All right, clear skies in Nairobi. This is what we are being told. It might change later, though. 13 degrees at the moment. We'll see highs of 26, and those partly cloudy conditions will continue throughout most of the day. Thunderstorms expected in Njeri this afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 13. Nakuru is partly cloudy at 14 degrees. We'll see rain showers later with highs of 23. In Eldoret, it's 11 degrees and clear skies at the moment. It'll be rainy later with highs of 21 and lows of 11. Clear skies in Kisumu at 18 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 17. In Kakamega, it's 14 degrees and partly cloudy. It'll rain this way throughout the day with highs of 26 and lows of 14. Malindi is experiencing light rain showers at the moment. The state of rain is likely to continue throughout the day with highs of 28 and lows of 24. It's mostly cloudy in Mombasa at 22 degrees. It'll change later though with highs of 28 and lows of 22. It's likely to be a wet afternoon. It's partly cloudy in Uganda at 18 degrees. Kampala specifically will have some rain this afternoon with highs of 27 and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam is clear this morning at 21, highs of 29 and lows of 20. Joburg at 7 degrees, clear skies, highs of 19 and lows of 6. Lagos, 24 degrees. We'll see highs of 29 and lows of 22 with partly cloudy conditions through most parts of the day. In Paris, there's a high temperature warning for red today, even hotter than yesterday. Clear skies currently at 24 degrees. They will see highs of 36 and lows of 23. Partly cloudy at 22 degrees in London. It's going to be a rainy afternoon with highs of 34 and lows of 21. Still Monday night in New York, 28 degrees and clear skies. It'll be a warm day with highs of 32 and 24 the low when the sun does come up.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Minutes after 6 o'clock. It's a situation.
Mornings.
Kenya's biggest proverb.
Okay. When you say it in English, it's easy to understand in the language that you had preferred earlier. Today's proverb. When deeds speak, words are nothing. When deeds speak, words are nothing.
Okay. Sisemi kitu.
You say nothing by saying nothing. That you said nothing.
Just do it. Just do it. Okay.
Was that not a byword for some product some times back? I'm trying to remember which product it was, but it doesn't really matter.
Nike.
Some time back, it's still.
It's always there. Yeah.
You know, some of these things we really need to. There's need for a consensual understanding of these things. Like, you see, I will not be confused and keep quiet at the same time.
All right.
There is a word that for the longest time I understood the spelling of and I even knew the pronunciation. But that word, I no longer hear it in the form I'm used to. It's written poignant.
Oh,
Okay?
you used to pronounce it as that.
Still do.
Oh, okay.
But I realize that when you say it in a way that I have difficulties pronouncing. What's it again?
Who says it?
You.
Me, Nduh.
Yes.
Oh, you're poignant.
See? Now, this to be clear. You need to clarify this one is the one which is spelled like this, and it's normally called this, but it's now called this. Now,
Nike.
Thank you.
The one formerly known as Nike
Or Nike.
is now known as.
Nike.
Now, see?
And that car, the Porsche.
Porsche.
See, now we're at peace. Now we're on the same page. Now we can
Because they're not
continue.
English words. You want to pronounce them like English words, but they're not.
Now, yes, also that one you also need to say. Now we can continue the conversation. We're on the same page. Yes. But you utter something, I'm wondering, what are you saying?
That one that has a G in the middle. Oh my God. Okay.
Poignant.
Is that other spaghetti thingy? The spaghetti one.
Spaghetti what?
The bolo.
Bolognese.
If it was just Eric and I in the room, it would have taken an hour
Bolognese.
for me to figure out what he was talking about. Thank you, City.
I knew.
That spaghetti one. Bologna. Chukunna. Okay.
All right. I see you're calling on your ancestors.
Telling you, they're the only ones who can help me with the two of you.
Surely. Okay, let's go to the big stories of the day. The richest counties are listed today on the front page of the Standard. This is according to national data. This is not some cooked up data by some political people who are calling themselves Team Kenya. No,
I like
this
the rider.
is the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that has produced some data, looked at it from various parameters.
This is the producer's story, not the data. This is in his story.
In his story.
Anyway, I've looked for that data. I've really looked for it. But carry on.
You've looked for the data in the story.
In this story.
Well, you won't find the data
Apart
in the
from
story.
telling us this is rich.
You won't find the data in the story unless you go now to the KNBS website, right? Maybe they've posted now the raw data. Here they are talking about Nairobi, Meru, Njeri, Kirinyaga, the country's richest counties. They are looking at the percentage of people who are classified as poor per county. And then they say that Nairobi, with a population of 4.2 million people, this is the most populous county in the country, only 16% of the population is poor.
Okay.
Lives below.
You know, my problem began right there. Surely, even if
16% of 4 million.
hiyo ni sawa tu, ni watu wengi sana. Wengi. My problem is, should you not at least tell us this concept that you are discussing called poverty, okay?
Yep.
In your article, what do you mean by it? Because when, for instance, a Kenyan tells you so-and-so is wealthy, just because you understand the word wealthy doesn't mean you're talking about the same thing.
Okay.
No.
By the same token, poverty.
So the story tries to let's see if
Try?
Yeah, let's see what the story says.
I'm going to wish you luck here. Carry on.
It says, for example, that wait, I'm going to that paragraph.
Carry on.
Paragraph. The second richest county, most of its residents are able to comfortably fend for themselves. That is one. The other poverty line metric, this beyond the so-called poverty line metric, multidimensional poverty. Report is looking at dimensions such as physical development, that is stunting, nutrition, health, education, child protection, information, water, sanitation, and housing. Now, if you do not have adequate access to these, then you are considered poor. Okay?
Yes.
So if, for example, your growth is stunted, the population in that area has stunted growth, poor. Nutrition, access to nutrition and health and education facilities and child protection and information and water and sanitation and housing, that classifies you into that index of poverty.
Yes. You see, for someone who understands what they're talking about, it's an easy read and you understand. When you say housing, what do you mean? The size of the household?
Yeah.
The materials with which the house is built? The number of rooms in the house?
Yeah.
Essentially, what I'm referring to is a concept called a household survey,
Yep.
or details that you get from a household survey. But this is incomplete if you don't talk about the economic activities that they engage in, whether it's agriculture, etc. And most of these places are rural areas. Then there's the linchpin in this discussion.
Yeah.
There is the policies that the government has on this thing called poverty reduction.
Yeah.
Whether it is good, effective, non-existent, whatever. Because you discuss all these things, in the absence of that, you will actually not really understand what it is you're talking about.
I hear you, CT, but now you are looking at it from a research angle, from an academic angle. From a common mass consumer perspective, it is the basics.
Yes, it's basics, but
Right.
it requires explaining for
is
it to
the
be
basics.
understood.
Now, if you go into the greater explanation, then you'll go into from page 1 to page 17, just breaking down the KNBS information.
Actually, no. Even in the story, let me explain to you. When you say, for instance, I'm going to quote on page 3 of the Standard, a politician is being quoted.
Yeah.
The findings of 2019 GCP and the GDP of each country will also disappoint a group of politicians from Mount Kenya region who are pushing for more resources. It suddenly becomes a discussion of what we've been having in where?
It
In the Senate.
contextualizes this in the Senate. Yes.
Yes. If you look at a lot of the discussions that we see in this article,
Yeah.
it goes back there. I think you've understood my beef.
Not quite.
All right, let me carry on with my beef so
Yeah.
that I can make the beef clearer.
Yeah.
If you say, for instance, and you quote a politician by the name of Cecily Mbarire, who chairs a caucus of 70 MPs drawn from the Mount Kenya region, says,
Yep.
we know that the Mount Kenya region contributes over 60% of the country's GDP. It's a lovely statement, but I will then ask the question, kindly explain what you mean. Again, you'll tell me, I'm going to research. Actually, I am. Statements of that nature, when put in the context of this issue we've been having within Parliament, doesn't help explain. We are talking about poverty here. Focus on the discussion of poverty. Let people understand why they are poor. Let them understand how they can get out of the poverty if you want to go that far. Don't bring in this discussion of the Senate into this discussion.
Why?
It's not necessary.
Why? Does it not have context?
If you want it
Because
to have...
you see,
No.
when you look at that story and you're thinking, okay, so the percentage of the poor, and this is based on all these issues of their access to basic services, their access to basic amenities, and then you think about what is it that would move them from this level of poverty? Is a government being able to give them access to all these things? What do they need? What do the governments need to be able to move them from the current level to a better level? It's funds. Where do those funds come from? This is what we are discussing in the Senate. And what are the parameters that we're using in the Senate to discuss the disbursement of these funds? These are the same parameters we're using in the Senate.
You know, the discussion in the Senate went south quite a while back when we even stopped discussing the funds. We started talking marginalization, not funds. Not funds that have been made available in the past, not funds that are even available right now. It was this. In the absence of an understanding of our way of looking at it, whichever way you choose, then there'll be no funds. Lie. Another lie. We are stuck and cannot move because Senate seems to be stuck and cannot move. Another lie. So when you then bring in the discussion of poverty, even prior to the evolution, there was poverty.
Yep.
And one of the things that any politician will talk about when they want to be elected is they'll want to present the perspective that they are in a position to help not just reduce, alleviate it completely.
True.
That's where the projects and the development projects come in.
Yep.
So now, here we are discussing poverty. I agree with you, Eric, that you cannot go county by county and talk about the specifics. But the generalities that would actually feature and encompass many of our communities, because the bulk of the communities we're talking about here are rural communities. So they have commonality when it comes to some of these issues.
Yeah.
Perhaps my leaning and my bias is what I'm discussing here, not necessarily objective. But if I was discussing poverty, I would discuss things that people can relate to as being the cause of their
Of
poverty.
their poverty.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is those things, the basics. Poverty is poverty.
No.
It's lack of
An,
access to
an
the basics.
understanding of poverty, Eric, there are households where when you own a radio, you are considered well-to-do.
You're wealthy, yes.
If you have a bicycle, you're now even more well-to-do. If you are a motorcycle, now something else.
Yep.
Car, you're stratospheric.
Yep.
All I'm saying is,
And even KNBS actually considers all those things.
I know they do. The writer of this particular article did not do justice to what the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics found out. I know what they do. They go into very serious details. This one, the leaning was more political.
So it's very top level
Yes.
and a political slant to it.
Yes. as
Because
opposed
it
to
comes
the-
and tells
yes.
us that the least, the poorest counties are the ones that currently are complaining
See,
about marginalization.
it may very well
And
be
it
true.
also shows you that those that have been complaining about 1 man, 1 shilling are actually the ones that are doing very well. So yes, they are populous, but the population in that county is doing well. If you talk about Meru, Njeri, Kirinyaga, Narok, Kiambu, Machakos, Tharaka Nithi, look at the top 10. And then look at the formula.
Literally
and
all these
what's
counties
in
that
there
have been mentioned as the top 10
are the
if you look
gainers.
at them, many of them are counties that have extremely arable land.
and they are Mount Kenya.
Well, Nyamira has certainly moved to Mount Kenya, that's for sure.
You see how far Nyamira is down the road? It's number 16.
Yes.
Meru, Njeri, Kirinyaga,
Narok is also in
Kiambu,
Mount Kenya.
Machakos, Tharaka Nithi, Murang'a, Mombasa,
Mombasa is also in Mount Kenya.
It's number 10.
Yes.
Out of the top 10.
And Narok is number 5.
Out of the top 10, only Narok and Machakos and Mombasa are not considered Mount Kenya.
Mount Kenya.
Can you imagine?
Why?
Hmm?
Okay.
By the way, Nairobi is also not Mount Kenya, just so that we understand each other.
You tell anyone who will tell you that the largest population in Nairobi is the Mount Kenya population.
And of course, I would say that is anecdotal, but it's not necessarily true.
It is actually from the KNBS census data.
Yes, people who live here or people who simply work and then go
People
back.
who are found in Nairobi on the night of the census.
Precisely.
That means they live here.
Nope. It means you are found here on the night of the census.
In their home at 9 p.m.
Yes.
afterwards.
Yes.
25 minutes to 7. Let's take a look at traffic.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, let's see what the roads are looking like this morning. It doesn't look too terrible from where we are sitting now. I'm on Mombasa Road. We know that there was some drama there yesterday. Hopefully that will not be the same story today. It's looking like it's flowing really smoothly all the way from Mlolongo and then towards the Cabanas, and then after that towards General Motors. It looks fine, guys. Thika Road getting into the CBD, past Muthaiga Corner and also at the Pangani Underpass. As you get into town, it should be fine. Westlands coming in as well is looking good, guys. Not much of a problem. Right about 6:30. We'll see what it looks like in about half hour or so. But this is the time to get into the CBD if you needed to. Or, in other words, get out as well. Eastern and Southern bypasses also look good. It's still early pickings. Let's see what it looks like in a short bit. Spice FMKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter. Should you get stuck or you see something that people should avoid or alternate routes that people can use, let us know.
Spice and everything nice. All right. Spice it.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
23 minutes after to 7 o'clock. Yeah, we continue with a look at the big headlines this morning. What do you have?
There's a headline that has actually disturbed me. It was in actually yesterday's Business Daily.
Right.
I read it, I thought I understood, then I read it again yesterday evening. Headline, CS gets powers to slash fuel prices in new rule. I read it and said, okay, that's good. Levy to be created, funds to be controlled by the central bank.
Explain now for somebody who has not read that story.
The Petroleum Secretary, I'm going to read it,
Right.
has received powers to cut fuel prices and cushion motorists from sharp spikes in the cost of products from a subsidy fund. Sharp spikes. Once COVID settled in and became a household name, fuel prices kept going down. The time it rallied was around June, when people more or less tried to get back to their normal lives, so the consumption of petroleum products also went up. And crude prices sort of like rallied. However, this is now where the issue comes in. The subsidy will be supported by billions of shillings that will be raised from fuel consumers through the Petroleum Development Levy, which we already have, which has been increased to 5 shillings and 40 cents a litre of fuel from 0.40, representing a 1,250% rise.
Right. And then I'm waiting for the subsidy. I'm waiting for how now the PS has powers to
The Cabinet Secretary may, by writing to the administrator, request for a drawdown from the petroleum. Let me turn to page 4 where the story continues.
And the second word comes petroleum.
Yes. Development Levy Fund to stabilize local petroleum prices when he deems necessary. Okay. This way I'm a bit confused.
We've been played.
Played.
So you've seen it?
What's that thing you guys call it? Kara?
Karata.
Yeah. That.
Hey!
Patapotea.
0.40, that's normal levy. You increase it, the 40 remains, then you increase 5. This is a whole number here. This is not a fraction.
Basically, we are being taxed, and then the PS has been told, "Why, ukiona hiyo tax imepanda sana watu wanalia, you can give back a rebate, like a 0 point something rebate, okay?" But the point is that we are taxing you more and more.
Yes.
Already, out of every liter of fuel, more than 50% of that money goes to government
It does.
in forms of levies and taxes. Now you've increased that. And then you're saying, when things go out of line, the PS can, make a decision
As he deems fit.
as it deems fit
As he deems fit.
to cushion you, to offer a subsidy.
We were sufficiently cushioned. You uncushioned us with this 5 shillings and 40 cents. And then now you're telling us, now that I've uncushioned you, when I deem it fit, I will cushion you again.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, what are you talking about?
I know this is madness because as you're doing all that, as you're paying all that, imagine the people who were on stuck in the traffic yesterday.
Oh.
In a couple of months' time, they'll be told by a new company that, you know what, we've created an overpass, an expressway that moves you above the ground from Mulolongo
So you
all
can
the way
avoid
to...
you can avoid this
So you
nonsensical
can
jam.
avoid this nonsensical jam, but you will pay.
You pay for it.
So there'll be that levy and there'll be a toll. But the PS has been given powers to be sufficiently philanthropic once in a while and pass over some cushion. That story, by the way, I looked at it and I was like, okay, so
And
just
then
look,
the
why don't we just look
gentleman-
for a better way? Why
Our
don't we just
petroleum
look for a
PS
way?
is called Andrew Kamau. He says the fund is necessary where volatility in global prices is a major risk for economic planning. What on earth is this man talking about?
So the fund is basically what he's saying, that this fund is, the government is just taking this money so that it can be cushioning us in the
And we're
future.
going to keep it in a place that you all know is safe and secure. It's called Central Bank of Kenya. We were doing okay. You charge us more money, then you tell us, oh, by the way, this money that I'm charging you, when you have a problem, I can give it back to you. Why are you taking it in the first place?
Just leave it with us. What's the problem?
And by the way, fuel prices right now are not volatile. No. No.
For now, they're not, but we don't know about the future.
No, we
Just
don't.
judging by what we saw in
No,
was
we
it
don't.
was it February or January when Russia and Saudi Arabia disagreed and suddenly things just spiraled out of control.
Those
We
are
like
good
to see
things.
those kind of things.
Those are good things. Having these people agreeing all the time is not necessarily good for us. No. No. Sometimes that disagreement is actually useful for us poor third world banana republic type countries.
Types.
Yes. Anyway, that was the view that the man had. So just when you think it is safe to get out of the water, then the same paper, there's something that...
You're on a roll today, CC. Carry. Go.
Yes. No. I mean, it's you read something, then you read it again, and you wonder, did I read the same thing? Or
Bear in mind, this is yesterday's
did you
paper.
know that we have a competition authority of Kenya?
Yes.
Nduh?
Yes.
You know.
Sorry, say that again.
Competition authority.
Yes, I did actually. What did they do?
They have ordered retailers, manufacturers, and suppliers to create a code of practice which will become law and enforceable by the regulator. It's supposed to standardize and define several things in the firm's commercial relationship as a payment period and what constitutes default. Every time I read such things, I ask myself, is it that someone doesn't have enough work to do and they have to continue looking for
Why?
things to do?
Why?
You know something? You do not increase or improve commercial activity by enforced regulation, not necessarily. The regulations we have needed to be proven to be completely ineffective and ineffectual for some more to be added to it. Or there needs to be the argument, in my opinion, that what we are putting forth will be an improvement on what we already have. So we need to understand what we already have. In this time that we're in, maybe it's a wonderful opportunity to get things changing because just of the flux that we're in economically. That I would understand. But when you now start talking about retailing, which has become something new because of COVID, you're talking about manufacturing, which is also new. Everything you're talking about has become new simply because of the condition that we are in. And all you're saying is that you're giving people, how many months is it? A month or two? To be able to come up with this document that will be able to help you. On the surface, it appears, guys, can you discuss and find a way in which the citizens can benefit? But I read right through this, and I'm looking, where?
For that thing.
Yes.
For me, when I hear that, I'm feeling a bit satisfied because this is the competition authority telling the market, agree on how best you'd like to relate. All right? Instead of me coming up with regulations, I'd like you guys to sit down, agree, and self-regulate, come up with a code of conduct. So that instead of you bringing issues to me all the time and me having to look at whether it violates competition and all, why don't you agree on basic operating procedures?
You know, what you're saying would be absolutely spot on, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly, except that in 2019, something similar was brought into force, and it exists.
Yeah.
It's called the authority, and I'm reading again, the authority is aware of the existence of the Retail Trade Harmonized Code of Practice agreed by stakeholders and signed January 17th, 2019. That's what I was saying. This one, which already exists,
Because
shortfall.
if you look at
What's
that,
the
then you
problem?
may find that there has been some contention that has arisen.
The circumstances.
And the thing is now, looking at the kind of circumstances that we are in now, look at the kind of issues that we have with retailers, with their suppliers, because the manufacturers are the suppliers. It's retailers and their suppliers and how you guys operate. And one retailer goes down and suppliers are left with nothing, holding nothing at all in their hands, and yet they supply to this. How do you want? Look at what you presented, then look at the...
Essentially, you're saying that as far as you're
Update.
concerned, this seems to be, look at this thing and see if there's something else you need to add,
Yeah.
or something you need to tweak,
Yeah.
so that this thing is, should we say, more user-friendly given the circumstances that we're in.
Yeah.
Then clearly I misread it.
That's how I actually understand it. That it's a regulator saying, instead of me coming up with regulations, you are the ones who are doing the business. Sit, agree, bring something that is already harmonized and agreed upon. You presented something, yes, and then after that, new information emerged. Now go and revise and add the new information. Yeah.
Before I let go of this paper, just so that people who like to travel from one lakeside to perhaps a seaside destination,
Ocean.
yes, a bigger lake called an ocean, Jumbo Jet, our low-budget carrier, owned by Kenya Airways, has been given authority to fly directly from Kisumu to Mombasa. Beginning and end of my statement. Let's carry on.
From
one
Kisumu to
lakeside
Mombasa.
to
And vice versa,
Nice.
of course.
Oh,
And vice versa.
Okay.
So you don't need to stop in Nairobi.
From the lakeside to the seaside.
Direct.
no
Wow.
connecting flight at JKI.
Direct.
Super duper.
You
All
wonder
right.
why did they... Why? Okay.
Yes, no, please, wonder loud. It's important that you wonder loud.
And I think I just found maybe it's a continuous process. Let's first of all give you, this is the hub, so you can come from the hub to the spokes. And then can you move from one end of the spoke to the other end of the spoke? Do you have the capacity? Do you have justification? Do I just need to give you a license just like that yet? Now, if you've proven that, yes, there's a high demand here and there's high demand on the other side, fine, you can operate. And I have a route in the sky.
The airline is
Because
ours.
KCAA also...
The skyline is ours.
Yes.
The regulator is ours.
KCAA also looks, there are roads in the sky.
Yes, there are.
So,
There are pathways as whatever they're called.
kuna barabara hapa, wacha tujenge moja. Good
Okay.
thing for Jumbo Jet.
So, things that rarely happen on the continent. Lebanon's Premier Hassan Diab, I'm stepping right out, right, okay?
Yep.
Hassan Diab stepped down yesterday Amid fury within and outside his government over the deadly Beirut port blast he blamed on the incompetence and corruption of a decade-old ruling class. Today we are heeding the people and their demands to hold accountable those responsible for a disaster that has been concealed for 7 years, he said in a televised address, blaming a corrupt political elite for the August 4th explosion. This is why today I announced the resignation of the government. Politics in multi-confessional Lebanon is dominated by former warlords from the 1975 to 1990 civil war who have exchanged their military fatigues for suits or were replaced by relatives. Their corruption created this, Diab said. Between us and change stands a thick wall protected by their dirty tactics. Diab, who was named in December, is the second Lebanese premier to step down in 10 months. His government, formed in January to tackle a spiraling economic crisis, has come under all-out attack since a port blast killed 160 people, wounded 6,000, and ravaged swaths of Beirut.
So
Authorities
what
say
do the protesters say?
about this resignation.
Yeah. Because this is
it's
somebody
just a
who
cog
came
in the wheel.
Yeah,
It's just a cog in
you
the
came
wheel.
to office as a result of our own demonstrations a couple of months ago. You formed your government in January this year, and now we have said get out. But these are individuals who are getting out. The system is still in place.
This is what everybody's saying.
Yeah.
This is what the protesters continue to say. And this is the reason why the protesters are still in the streets. So you've stepped down, that's all right, well and good. But I keep saying it's like an antibiotic. You start the first dose and you have to keep going until you push the disease out. And so you don't start taking antibiotics and then stop when you're feeling a little bit better. So with the resignation of Diab yesterday and that entire government, it doesn't mean that the disease is out. And I think that the protesters are going to continue to employ this antibiotic until the rot is out. And
you think
their
that-
resolve is strong because they did not get into the streets on August 4th.
No.
They've been there for a very long time. And like I said, it's a cog in the wheel and it looks like they're not going to stop until it's
So they've
complete.
dealt with the symptom, isn't
They've dealt
it?
with the symptom, but as far as they're concerned, they're still
have-
digging at
the
the
powers
rot.
that seem not to be listening to the people.
The powers that be don't seem to be resident in Lebanon.
Yeah. For them, they still think that they can, convince the people that we've done something. We don't want you to do something. We want you out so we can do something. That's a message from the people.
And that's what I'm saying. I think
The
the resolve,
solution is not to come from, the leadership of the political class, the present leadership.
I think the resolve at this point is stronger than we've ever seen resolve for change in Lebanon before, historically. And that's why I think that regardless of where this ruling class is domiciled, the people are saying it is enough. And we are not going to stop. We're not going to go home and sit down. And the interesting thing is that as I looked at this, you would think that it's people who don't have anything to do that are in the streets. But guess what? The people who are protesting are professionals, young and old, the youth, the jobless, whomever it is. Everybody is protesting against this. Across tribe, across religion, across cadre. Everybody's saying it's too much. And
It means everyone has suffered.
absolutely.
So their fondly held views, political inclinations, religious leanings, class, all that, it's clear, isn't helping.
No,
Yep.
They have determined who their common enemy is.
the system.
The system is actually never really a problem.
Many
Because our
Lebanese
system, inanimate as it is really run and controlled by
people.
And a certain thinking among those people.
Many Lebanese want heads to roll over the tragedy they see as shocking proof of the rot at the core of their political system. Before Diab's announcement, 4 ministers had already decided that they would no longer serve a government that had shown little willingness to take the blame or to put state resources at the service of the victims. At least 9 lawmakers have also announced that they would quit in protest, as 2 senior members of the Beirut municipality. The August 4th explosion came in as Lebanon already was reeling from an economic crisis. So, yeah.
Could you argue that this was a tender keg waiting, no pun intended, to explode?
To explode. Yes, it was. It really was.
Okay. There's a story on page 20 of The Standard. And this story is about a coast tycoon who has been ordered to refund 1.8 billion shillings that he got for SGR land, all right, in SGR compensation. This is Tycoon Mohammed Jafar. On Thursday, the High Court in Mombasa revealed how the National Land Commission bungled land payment claims during the construction of the SGR. The court found that the firm owned by Mohammed Jafar, this is Miritini Freeport Limited, irregularly received the money in December 2015. It's clear that the NLC paid part of the compensation money to a wrong party, either knowingly or inadvertently. The amount alleged already paid to the interested party is 1.4 billion shillings, plus a further interruption amount of 360 million shillings. So there was a piece of land in Mombasa, and so the allegation is that this businessman and the company moved squatters out and claimed that they owned this piece of land, and then they got the money from the National Land Commission. This case now has basically turned on its head because the issue has now been called that you have to refund this money.
And it didn't begin yesterday with this ruling. This is something that has happened before. And this particular gentleman, by the name of Mohammed Jafar, was actually challenging an earlier ruling by the court. Because the earlier ruling seemed to have favored the squatters. They had been unprocedurally removed from land which the government had allocated to them as compensation for having been moved from some other land.
From another land.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see? So what he seemed to have been fighting was repaying back this money. But Justice who was...
Eric Ogola.
Yes, was categorical and clear.
This money, it needs to go back.
And not only that, with the costs.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
This is the same gentleman. If you've heard of a company called Green Bulk, Mombasa,
Yep.
Same gentleman
Yep.
who owns Green Bulk.
Yep. It's this is a big case.
Oh, this is a massive case.
And it's a big ruling. I mean, and it takes you back to what the NLC was doing at that time. You know, throughout the entire compensation for very many of these projects. We have cases regarding the entire SGR line from Nairobi all the way to Suswa. We have cases regarding expansion of roads around the country, and allegations and counter-allegations against NLC officials.
And many of the people who were perhaps in that commission are not only under scrutiny or investigation, but should we say their 40th day is up. And they're being asked to respond to some of these things. You know, the thing that I find really traumatizing, literally traumatizing about these stories is how the common man has actually been downtrodden on these issues. Someone owns land. Somehow the compensation is an issue because this is a nobody as they're considered. And yet, this was one scheme that would have benefited and ensured that just by virtue of your being in this nondescript place that nobody considers to be important, but because of the railway, your life would change.
You're compensated, you're able to move to a better place, you use that money to
do different things.
Yes. Improve your livelihood. I mean, it was an opportunity that was basically missed.
It was. By the way, Eric, on that same page, state rolls out instant fines for petty traffic offences. The limit that I have seen here that you're supposed to pay upon
petty offence,
10,000 maximum.
Okay.
But there's a whole list: driving without a valid license, parking where you shouldn't park, not producing your driving license, failure. This one caught my attention. Failure by driver to stop when required to do so by a police officer in uniform, 5,000 shillings.
So it's possible that these fines could be compounded and you find yourself paying a lot more than
Yes.
10,000 shillings on a
Yes.
day.
You were stopped, you didn't stop,
You didn't
and
stop,
then
you don't have a valid
let
driving license.
you don't have your
Yes,
insurance is
it's
expired.
verified and
Rounding up.
Okay. But all those are instant fines.
instant meaning you pay.
You
On
pay
the
right
spot,
there
no
on the
going
spot.
to
Yes.
No
court and all
cost.
this
No.
long
I've
story.
read through this. I was looking. Perhaps they might have introduced maybe negotiation fees.
No?
Who determines that the police officer stopped you and you didn't stop?
And you didn't
So
stop.
it's the police
Maybe you
officer.
thought he was waving.
Bus. Now
They
that
stop.
already starts from there.
Stop.
Yeah.
He will tell you whether he was waving.
Because a police officer can tell you, I've received report from my my
the road.
colleague
He
up the road
stopped.
that he stopped you and you refused to stop. So 5,000 shillings. Or maybe Sikuona officer. But he was there.
Yes, but
And he
what
stopped
I've
you.
also noticed here,
Where?
there is no fine for arguing with the police officer.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So well.
But there's a
Try
fine
that.
for attempting to even slap a police officer. Coming to the top of the hour, this is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we cross over into the Nairobi National Park and we see whether you can find lions, zebras, rhinoceros,
Wow.
no elephants, but gazelles and giraffes and others.
Actually, we do have elephants.
In the Nairobi National
Not in
Park? No.
We do.
7 o'clock. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it.
Spice up your life. Spice FM. Nakuru.
Okay, let's take a
Traffic.
look at what it looks like in Nairobi this morning. It's not so bad on Mombasa Road. We know that on Jogger Road, it's already building up all the way from Mombasa as you get to the City Stadium roundabout. You'll be able to get through, though, without too much drama as you're getting either going towards industrial area or towards the CBD. You should be fine, guys. It's Tuesday morning. Hopefully, it's not as crazy as it was yesterday. The eastern and southern bypasses up and open for use this morning. Getting to Langata Road, you'll take a little bit as you get down towards the Timor roundabout and then either towards Bagadi Way or then down through Langata Road to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, where you will join the traffic that goes all the way to Westlands on Uhuru Highway. Okay, coming out of Westlands and then getting into the CBD is looking good, as is on Thika Road. As you're trying to make your way to the CBD, you'll get through the Globe Cinema roundabouts. You'll hold up for just a little bit, but then you'll be fine as you get into town. All right, outbound of the CBD in most cases is looking good. Don't see much problems right now, but we'll keep an eye on. Keep an eye on for us as well. And then let us know what you see on Spice FM KE on Twitter. We want to keep it moving this Tuesday. We didn't move much yesterday. We want to move today.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is
2.5
the
minutes after
Situation
7
Room,
o'clock.
the
It's
only
Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and on KTN Home. We welcome our audience on KTN Home. We are on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, in Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, in Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Njeri, Malindi 97.7. This show also live streams on our digital platforms, and this is Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. So we want to cross over into the Nairobi National Park, 117 square kilometers of the park, and we find various animals, and also we find a raging debate on the viability of this park as a conservancy, or just looking at, look, this is prime real estate, and we need to think about the prime real estate. So we bring in the discussion about, we have seen over the weekend an appointment that was revoked because of somebody's opinion expressed earlier on the viability of the Nairobi National Park. We've had that conversation here. It was heated, heated conversation about the viability of the Nairobi National Park, whether it's good for conservation, whether it's... that conversation should be had. City, what do you say today?
Well, actually, if you talk about the square kilometer age as opposed to acreage, outside Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, that acreage is bigger than most of the towns that we have in this country. So, if you start from that perspective, it's a lot of land.
Yeah.
But of significance, it came into being as a national park in 1946. 1946 was the previous century. And many of the ideas that perhaps were brought into the fore at that particular point in time took into consideration the time and what was at that particular point relevant. Now in 2020, we've moved on to the next century.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing that has not perhaps been debated upon significantly, one word is thrown in. It's unique. It's one of a kind. True. Very true. But there are other factors that you must also consider beyond just the economic value. And you also need to understand whether the economic value also can easily tie in and be relevant within a discussion of, say, an ecological inheritance, an environmental inheritance, and an environmental promotion. These things need not be opposed. They need not be contradictory. And if they are, then perhaps we need to consider how you can find a way in which we can harmonize it. Because that Nairobi National Park is a unique and valuable asset is not in question. What is in question is to what use would it be put to ensure that it is the best that could possibly.
It's the definition of that unique viability.
Yes. That one.
What do you say?
Well, I mean, you can say unique. I mean, you can talk about unique and the only city in the world to have a national park within a capital city and talk about so many things. But I do agree that it comes a time where you're going to have the debate on whether it is bringing the kind of value that it actually should. All right. There are very many examples around the world whereby you have a natural resource that then is being used to actually either promote economic development or do one thing or the other. And you can say you can have it for the sake of having it, but really, of what value is it really, really bringing? And I think up until now, nobody actually wanted to talk about it and say, no. There's a city, there's a park in the city, and that's about the size of it. No, I mean, I think that a lot more can be done with this, and it's about time that now those
What
debates.
is a lot more can be done?
Well, I mean, okay.
When
so-
people say a lot more can be done, there are those that are thinking, they're looking at it and thinking, hey, I can put up high-rise buildings. I can actually put up a whole new housing estate in this particular space. So what do I do with the animals? So they know how to move. They'll move. Or we can translocate the animals to other parks. We have other big
23
national parks.
national parks and 26 conservancies and what.
So
have
there are
you.
those that
Yes.
would argue that we can put this into better use or maximize its use, and that's what they have in mind. This is moving animals out, moving humans in. Is this what you have in mind?
This is what I'm saying about the conversation needs to happen, because on both sides of it, you will have the reasons why they would and why those would actually make sense.
Do you know you brought in something really good here? Value. Something called a unique value proposition. All right? When you keep saying the only,
So
there
what?
are other details that uniquely demarcates and places Nairobi National Park in a place that no other national park that we have could actually be placed. For instance, it is Kenya's #1 breeding site for rhinos. I know most people don't know this, but it is. Number one.
Number one breeding site for rhinos means what?
Meaning the place where rhinos are most comfortable to breed, meaning as in grow in numbers, population increase, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Nairobi National Park.
Why? What makes it unique for them?
That is something that is still being studied. Yes, because I asked the same question. By the way, I had this discussion with the former director of the Kenya Wildlife Services, Dr. Julius Kimngetich, and I asked the same question because he brought this point to the fore and told me, he said, look, it is just something that has been a reality for the longest time.
Yeah.
He said, what we remember was rhinos being moved and some dying.
Yeah.
He said, but the reason why they were being moved is because there were many. That's why some had to be translocated.
They breed here, so you need to look at how to.
They breed well here. Somehow that ecosystem seems to agree with them.
Okay.
Details of it are not clear. But he also told me something else that I didn't know. He told me that for the longest time, people talk of the Mara and the wildebeest migration. He said, do you know that Nairobi National Park was the second outside the Mara, which also hosted that migration? He said, but lazy planning, poor planning, I
Or
actually,
used to in the past.
not even at 100 years ago,
Wildebeests.
yes, they used to move from there. There was a path. Guess what put stay to that? The EPZ, yes, the growth of that particular region. They used
So
to
the
move to the
Kitengela side,
yes, it did. They used to move to the Athi Plains. It was a second migration. Dead, finished, gone, dusted. Nobody can even remember. Then he said something else which I thought was also very interesting. He said, when you're a city of 4.2 million, there's this carbon that you produce that actually needs to be absorbed.
Yeah.
Said Nairobi has only two spaces that can do that for you, Karura and the park. Said you may think it is not important, but it is actually really very important, because essentially what you're saying is Nairobi has two lungs that helps it breathe, Karura and Nairobi National Park. Now, if you don't think that we need to actually breathe and that in itself is not important, hence the statement I made at the beginning that all these propositions need to be balanced and say, how do we ensure that these arguments that are being put on both sides find some commonality? Because so far, the argument has been the great divide. There's this view,
There's
and it's
the-
opposed
yeah,
by
this
this
one.
other view.
The
And so
view,
it-
basically, the view that has been preferred before is the same one that we are seeing in the Senate. It is humans and animals.
I understand
It is
completely.
people saying
Get
that,
rid of it.
look, we need humans to find space to live. Where we are right now, Nairobi is congested. And we have animals here, we can move these animals. They have other places that
Actually,
they can
why
go to.
don't I take the argument as logical conclusion? Move the human beings for heaven's sake. They're easier to move than the animals.
Than the animals.
Yes, much easier.
Yeah, that's,
Build. There's land around Nairobi.
Now-
Nairobi National Park is not the only land around Nairobi.
now
move
that,
it. Move
when
them.
that argument is actually now brought about by the people who are conservationists, people just look at them at, you people only think animals. You forget everything else. You forget that you're a human being. Because you like to wake up in the morning and go take pictures of birds and take pictures of lions and zebras. You assume that the rest of us are interested in that. No. You guys can move to the Mara and let us move to the Nairobi National Park. Arguments and counter-arguments.
Arguments and counter-arguments, but I would say that the spaces within which development has taken place in terms of infrastructure in Nairobi alone really hasn't been planned or managed well. Now, for you to say that you want to now take that and go into another area which you can't even now start to fathom how that would work, I would say if that's the argument that's being taken, what about the spaces that you've already tried to develop? How about you manage those properly? How about you replan those areas properly before you want to go into a place where you're not even prepared to take on the headache? The places that exist, how about you manage those
And
properly first?
look at East Africa.
There are dormitory towns of Nairobi. There are dormitory closet areas of Nairobi, which, for example, you've moved people into, and even that has been a disaster in terms of planning. How about you deal with those areas first instead of going to look now for other virgin development land that you want to now say you want to go and develop, so that we can move some of the population of Nairobi into those spaces. The ones that you have already started, have those been planned properly? Have those been managed well? In terms of infrastructure development, has it been carried out well? It has not. It's like saying, I've got this on my plate. I'm not going to finish it yet, but I've seen another one there. Let me go and grab it without managing the one that you have on your plate first. So it looks nice. It looks okay. Open, huge, great green open spaces that I can use and turn it into cement city, whereby the ones that you have, you've not been able to manage them properly. And I'm saying your eye can be very big, but look at the one that you have here first and deal with it.
Ours not just the eye, it's the mouth.
Everything is big.
Yes.
This conversation, even previously, I'm very, very much pro retaining the Nairobi National Park as it is. But for the benefit of this conversation, I am going to be the devil's advocate full on, so be prepared. Let's
Welcome,
bring in
Mr.
a
Horne.
conservationist, and this is Reinhard Bonke. Reinhard Bonke is a conservationist. He's a man who has actually basically studied environment, and he's moving on to study more of leadership in conservation. A member of the Friends of the Nairobi National Park. He's now joining us on the line. Reinhard, good morning. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on board.
Reinhard, you've heard this conversation before many times, I'm sure, as one of the Friends of the Nairobi National Park.
Yes.
People who have argued about moving or at least occupying a bit of some space in the Nairobi National Park. And then there are those like you who are conservationists who only see the other benefits of the Nairobi National Park. Let's just start off by giving you that opportunity. What are these benefits of the Nairobi National Park?
Number one, before you will go to the benefit, I would echo what one of you said before, that the problem we have with Nairobi National Park and Kenya's protected areas is actually not, it's more the people versus the wildlife, but then it's that lack of proper integrated approach towards, infrastructural planning. Because right now, Nairobi we have a clear plan of Nairobi city as a city, but then this was, of course, due to corruption and a lot of issues. It was never properly followed. That's why we see open spaces such as Karura Forest, Nairobi National Park, and Nduh Okoh Park are not being considered as prime land for alternative development or cheap. So the major ecosystem values, if you look at my undergraduate studies, was on the air regulation on especially the vehicular sector, and according to WHO, the air pollution in Nairobi City alone from the vehicular sector and the industries is 40% above the recommended level. And there's a study conducted by the University of Nairobi through Professor Mandiga, which indicated that 10 out of 10 children born and raised in Nairobi, 6 out of them, by the time they turn 10 years old, they will be suffering respiratory diseases. You need to look at Kenyatta National Hospital, Mbagathi Hospital, all these hospitals. The amount of respiratory diseases in Nairobi, which emanates from air pollution, is very high. Where do all this go? I think maybe right now some of us can breathe because we have green spaces such as Nairobi National Park, Karura Forest, and all. I call them the city's lungs, the breathing. You cannot really quantify them economically. It contributes to the health and well-being of the Nairobians. So this is something you cannot really quantify monetarily, but there's that ecological services that it provides, purification of the air. This is a carbon sink. This is a climate change issue. So for me, without going into the details, this is what makes us healthy and what makes someone in Dandora breathe easy. Plus, it is our culture before, going deep into science.
So if we look at, we have Karura, we have Uhuru Park, we have City Park, we have Ololua Forest in Gong, we have other spaces.
Yes.
Those are helping us to breathe.
Yes.
And also, Hell's Gate National Park is not so far from here, from Nairobi.
Yes.
Neither is the Kilimambogo.
Yeah.
Neither are the other dispersal areas and the vast spaces in Kajiado County.
Yes.
So this
I agree with
simple
you.
117 square kilometers
Yes.
is just a part of the lung.
Let me give you what makes Nairobi National Park unique. Number one, it is the only black rhino sanctuary in East Africa, for your information. The oldest park in East and Central Africa, which indicated the Kenyans, it's more of, how do I speak, the facial appearance of Kenya in terms of matters of wildlife conservation, and we've been leading globally, from the last sightings where we pushed for giraffe, for instance, to be pushed under the Annex 1 of the endangered species. So Nairobi National Park hosts the highly endangered black rhino. It is an important, an IUCN declared important bird area. It has some endemic, unique, critically endangered bird species like the Rutles vulture, white-backed vultures, and all that. The ecosystem within the park itself is not, that's also what also makes it unique. We have the grassland, the river ecosystem, the forest ecosystem, and all that. Very rare you find a park with all that different types of ecosystems. Actually, I think there are 4 major ecosystems in one very tiny space. Now, the biggest problem we are seeing, the argument which we get from Kenya is that, like the healthcare, the Amboseli and all that, but the precedents created by destroying Nairobi National Park for sure will deem the word protected as being, useless, because what is it protected from if every Tom, Dick and Harry can come and erect whatever things they want to erect inside a protected area? So the precedents created with what will happen right now in Nairobi National Park. For instance, just bring it to your attention. We fought in 2015 the Southern Bypass, not as strong as we did now. It went through.
Yeah.
That section that was cut off the park, actually it's less than 170 square kilometers. That section that was cut off from the park is now, for sure, someone will take it in future and build some stuff in it, claiming it's a public property, or whatever name they'll baptize it. We lost that, and then came the 2017 standard gauge railway routed through Nairobi National Park. After that, Hell's Gate issue, where they're trying to bring Disneyland in Hell's National Park, losing that term wildlife protected area. There was an attempt that there were discussions in Parliament, not tabled officially, but there were talks of degazetting Hell's National Park. When that happened, came the SGR through Nairobi National Park. So the precedent created is whatever happens in Nairobi National Park right now will determine the fate of other parks, because there was this proposal when you had a meeting with the CS where they want to make the protected area, I don't know, they call it a rebranding or revamping of protected areas. It's a very beautiful name that if you can easily be tuned into what is proposed.
Yeah.
One of the things is completely fencing protected areas. Ask yourself, why do game reserves thrive perfect than parks? Because they are under county government, Masai Mara, for instance, under county government, and that approach by conservation is the actual conservation. Conservation in itself is a principle. So of combining, the community and wildlife.
And the wildlife there.
Yeah. So look at the relationship between the community around Masai Mara and the county government of Masai Mara. It's where all of them have one goal. The community is benefiting from wildlife conservation, same as the county government. But what's the problem with the national government? Why do we see all these threats, to parks when we think they should be in a more safer place under the national government? So there's that lack of people, that connection with the local community and this protected area. So my main problem is the precedents created.
Reinhard, if you look at Nairobi as a metropolitan area,
yes.
Because we understand how it takes place in the Masai Mara area, for example. And yes, you're right. The community and the county government actually work in tandem to make sure that this is protected. For a metropolitan area, how would you see that kind of relationship playing out, whereby there is the push and pull for this area to continue as far as infrastructure development is concerned, and at the same time you have this unique resource that you would want to protect? There's got to be some middle ground in some way, shape or form. How would it happen where there is, clear vision to continue to develop infrastructurally?
I'll give that maybe three responses. Number one, the original intention, if you all remember, of the standard gauge railway, which was supposed to be a standard gauge railway. What you have right now, it's a white elephant. But the original intention of the SGR was to expand the Konza city. It was to go through Konza. Kibaki had a very good project, actually, of decongesting Nairobi city. Having more roads, more infrastructure is not a solution to traffic in Nairobi. What will it do? Because if you look at the Thika Superhighway, for instance, we thought it would reduce traffic on Thika Superhighway. Have we achieved the original intention? No, because they promote people like, they have young professionals, the young Kenyan professionals to buy more vehicles. It's actually making more sense to own a personal car in Nairobi than a public transport. Why? Because it's not safe to, again, imagine yourself cycling from Thika to Nairobi. That's like a suicide mission. They'll knock you down. There's no proper planning or a honest engagement with this national government or whatever's in the planning. There's no integration between Minister of Transport or Minister of Wildlife or anything. Minister of Transport think they're higher than Minister of Wildlife, whereby, we are saying we can't compensate this, therefore we go for Karura Forest or we go for Nairobi National Park or we go for, and they don't do anything with it because, they say it's another from above. So the main problem is Nairobi City will continue, the congestion will continue because I'm alone right now. I'll have 5 or 10 kids, whatever, in future, and they'll all come to Nairobi looking for greener pastures. So the original intention of the SGR was to go through Konza so that people can move out of Nairobi to go to Konza. The devolution, for instance, was to decongest, if one of the key issues that I understand, decongest these key Kenyan
urban areas, right?
Yeah, encourage people to land in their counties, provide more opportunities. But again, corruption has overshadowed that. So we'll still see this problem emanating. That's number one. That lack of proper, infrastructural planning or decongesting Nairobi City. We need to promote more non-motorized transport and all that. And then number two, for your information, Nairobi National Park is 70% fenced. The 30% is not, the southern side is not fenced, that, covers for the 30% side. So that translocates into the community land, the Narashinoi Conservancy, all the way to Atikapiti. And as late as 1988, the famous wildlife migration was not actually the Masai Mara migration. It was to Nairobi National Park Africa Pity, the third triangle, northwards Amboseli, Mount Kenya, and then back to Nairobi National Park. It was more of a triangular migration of wild beasts, giraffe, and zebras. It was in thousands and thousands and thousands. We have data and photos of the last migration in 1986, where the population of wild beasts was 3 million, from an aerial count or census. What happened? That fragmentation. EPZ is a gazetted wildlife conservation area, which was the Ngong Hills all the way to EPZ, covering Nairobi National Park, was gazetted in 1949 as a wildlife conservation area. And Nairobi National Park was now what is under the government. This was under the community living then.
Yeah.
We have the Somalis here, we have the Maasai people here, we have the Kambas here, and they used to live, including inside Nairobi National Park, whereby now there was some sort of benefit sharing with the community living then. But again, corruption and population, which is another problem, has led to encroachment of, city, urbanization.
It keeps coming back to the issue of corruption and all, Reinhard. And I want us to take a break, and then we'll come back and continue this conversation. What is it? I mean, we are where we are. So you've painted for us the picture of the ideal of what the original intention was, what the best intention would be, the best picture would be. But then now, well, let's come back and look at the reality, where we are right now, what we are facing. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation at 25 minutes after 7 o'clock. We are speaking with Reinhard Bonke. He's a wildlife conservationist. He is with the Friends of the Nairobi National Park. We are asking, is the Nairobi National Park still viable as a wildlife conservation area? And that's a question we are asking even on our social media platforms. You can join that conversation as well on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as KTN Home. Time for a break. We'll be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
Clear skies in Nairobi at 13 degrees and the sun is out in all her glory. We're probably going to see that partly cloudy conditions coming later then with highs of 25. In Nakuru, 14 degrees and partly cloudy, likely to continue this way through most of the day. There's a chance of rain later on. In Eldoret this morning, it is 13 degrees and partly cloudy. We'll see highs of 22 there today. And we'll take a look then into Kisumu, where it's sunny conditions as well at 17 degrees, going to a high of 28 today. And in Kakamega, it's partly cloudy at 15 degrees, a chance of rain later on. It was raining earlier in Malindi, and that seems to have taken a break, but it'll come back later, seeing highs of 26. 22 degrees currently in Mombasa, and only partly cloudy conditions for most parts of the morning. Taking a look then outside Kenya into Kampala, where at 17 degrees, partly cloudy conditions for most of the day. Dar es Salaam at 22, holding strong, partly cloudy conditions and a bit of haze over most parts of the town. Johannesburg at a crisp 7 degrees this morning. We'll see highs of 17 and lows of 4 today. And in Lagos, it's overcast at 26 degrees. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 25.
Spice up your life.
Thika Road doing exceptionally well this morning, moving along just easily from the Garden City towards town. No traffic, well, not in a big way at least, and it's not in a bumper-to-bumper situation. Same thing goes for Mombasa Road today. It's moving along quite well, and no dregs from yesterday, which is a good thing. From Cabanas to about General Motors, you slow down a little bit, but then it'll open up for you thereafter as you get to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. And then getting into town and through to Westlands using Uhuru Highway, it's a bit slow today, a bit clogged up, but you'll be fine getting in and out of the CBD without too much of a headache. Coming down into town, then from Langata Road and Gong Road is looking pretty good, and from Westlands as well into the CBD. So not much drama today. We like this, don't we? I think so. Spice FM KE. Tell us what you see, and we'll try and keep it easy this morning.
Spice and everything nice. Alright. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
This
FM,
is Kenya's
Nairobi.
Next Conversation, the Situation Room, live streaming on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. We have cameras in the studio, and this show also is showing live on KTN Home. This hour, we are talking about the Nairobi National Park. The debate rages on the viability of the Nairobi National Park as a wildlife and ecological conservation area. Joining us on the line is wildlife conservationist Reinhard Bonke. He's a friend of the Nairobi National Park. He talks and lives conservation, and he's been explaining to us, the importance from where they see the importance of the Nairobi National Park.
The question I'd like to ask Mr. Reinhard Bonke is, I've listened to what he's saying, makes a lot of sense. But how do you really think that what you are saying resonates and communicates what you intend? One, to the public whose support you will need in some of these endeavors, and to those who make policy.
Yes, very much to the public. And just to finish up what I was saying before I jump into that, there's a Maasai community living on the southern side of the park. All the way, there's a Maasai at the Kamba, through the Asikapiti, what we call the Asikapiti Migration Corridor, which again still exists. In as much as there's a lot of fragmentation, the effort by the community-led, it's a community-led effort where they established the National Conservancy to try and keep the dispersal area open. Because in this dispersal area is the breeding ground for wild beasts. You'll go to Nairobi National Park on the rainy season, and you'll never see a wild beast in the park, but you'll see a very small population of zebras because there's still that migration between the park and outside. So this definitely shows you how that community ownership and positive perception towards wildlife conservation. But now to your issue with Kenyans.
Just before you go into that issue, Reinhard, this is the same community where we see many reports in the news of the community complaining about the cats, the wild cats. We have them complaining about lions and leopards roaming and eating their wildlife.
Yes. And if you're speaking of the video that I think was out 3 or 4 months ago, that was way, way further south in BSL area. But again, I'll come to that.
Okay.
Or just let me adjust that right now. We used to have, in the year 2009, the last El Nino rains when it happened. Because when it rains, the ungulates move out of the park into the community land, and then, of course, the predators follow them. So there's a lot of human-wildlife conflict that occurred during that period, and we only had 9 lions to the park. And the Friends of Nairobi National Park, and in partnership with the community, we went into a project, the Lion Project, started initiatives to try to reduce the human-wildlife conflict and improve the community perception towards wildlife conservation. We had the conservation programs, ile unapea to some small cash to tell them, pole, it has happened, but we are trying to sort it out. But the main successful project we're running right now, which is actually propagated or I would say founded or whichever, it came from a young Maasai boy living in that particular area, the Lion Project, whereby we use certain flickering automated lighting system to give an optical illusion to lions. So there's someone walking around the Maasai bomas. So this has been 98% effective. And if you look at the Kenya Wildlife Service report on human-wildlife conflict on the southern side of the park, it's gone drastically down. Whereby the only problem now that keeps on coming is the issue of monkeys, which I think is everywhere, monkeys and baboons. So the predation has completely gone down due to this initiative, that improvement in perception. Now, the issue to Kenyans, matters wildlife and environmental conservation has been an African culture, leave alone just Kenya. It has been. If you look at the world, if you just look at the term Africa, what comes into your mind? We are the richest continent in terms of biodiversity. That is what has been defining Africans. But what is happening right now, we are trying to go more like China or London. We are trying to become like them while they're busy having this project or a movement called the Regreening Europe. They realize where they made the mistakes, and we are going the same way. So we are losing biodiversity. There's that connection that we've lost. That people and wildlife, while general environmental conservation is gone. That is, I'm just looking for what is coming on my table, which is understandable, definitely. So what we're trying to make Kenyans see is to create more awareness. And thanks to COVID, this period is the highest time that Kenyans have visited Nairobi National Park, and Kenyans are leading the fight to save the park themselves. It's not more a white man cultural thing, because it's been perceived as a white man project, matters conservation, but this has been our way of life. So our main intention with Kenyans is to reconnect them to these particular conservation issues, and again provide opportunities. I mean, for me myself, I've been on climate change and all these other sectors and all that. And my next key area of focus, aside from doing my master's, is to try to link wildlife conservation and the people outside wildlife conservation, including the media and climate change people and the private sector. So there's never been that kind of synergy between these different sectors. If you go to different conferences, you see the same conservationist faces. But what I'm trying to do is to make it a Kenyan-owned initiative. To the policymakers, in 2018, the CS, Honorable Najib Balala, launched the National Wildlife Strategy, which was more like a good indication back then. And the main intention or goal of this the National Wildlife Strategy, was to maintain and improve the ecological integrity of Kenya's protected areas, not only Nairobi National Park. On the same, he set up a task force to conduct a research on the wildlife migration corridors or movement in Kenya. And they launched the National Wildlife Report on dispersal areas and corridors, which again shows an indication. It's launched a lot of good policy documents, including the National Rhinos Conservation and all that. So what you're trying to do is to be the third eye, to make them live according to what the original intention was back then. Because, for instance, right now, through the current controversial draft Nairobi National Park Management Plan, where they are proposing to have high-end lodges, helipad, and private houses and all that, we objected to it because it went against his own initiative when he started through the National Wildlife Conservation Strategy. So what you're doing is to just make the political sector or the policy makers to just align with what the original intention was with this protected area, to improve and maintain the ecological integrity of Kenya's protected areas, starting with Nairobi National Park.
Right,
so what you want is that reconnection between Africans and Kenyans to conservation. They should be on the forefront fighting for open spaces, because this is their health, culture, and way of life.
If you could do a comparison between what was existing, when you talk about the original agreement and what the original intention was for these areas or these spaces, could you do a comparison between what existed then and what exists now? In terms of wildlife, in terms of flora, fauna, in terms of now what you call endangered species?
What if I'll take the policy route? The major problem or the major conservation challenges, just an environment challenge we've had in Kenya, is that lack of mainstreaming of matters. Wildlife conservation.
No, Reinhard, because what I'm trying to get to somewhere with this so that I can ask my next question. I'm looking at specific populations. What existed then and what exists today?
Like in terms of numbers? Or
generally?
I gave an example of lions. We had 9 lions back then before we had these good policies coming up. And right now, due to this, again, good political goodwill and involvement of people like us in the conservation sector, we now have 48 lions in Nairobi National Park.
Okay.
Rhino population was going down, but due to this initiative, they've gone up.
So you can see, because of these interventions or because of this prolonged protectionism, as it were, that you see an increase in these population, animal population, for example, or flora fauna population, because of that, right? So with this taking place, can you see that there would be a need for the increase in value of the park, for example, as a good reason to keep it around?
You're talking about the financial value?
Oh, I'm talking about
Value in
Value.
its
Value.
entirety.
completely, and it could be
Definitely,
financial. It
definitely.
could be something that you have as a resource that other
Definitely.
people from other countries come to see. It could be something you talk about
Definitely.
carbon footprint, for example, across board.
Definitely. If all these interventions, again, we have very good documents. Kenya, we are very perfect at producing policy documents and all that. But the issue is the implementation, and that's where we come in to ensure we just like watchdogs. Yes, you're like, Minister, after you've gone a bit wrong. Maybe just go back to your original intention, because how they did it was through a proper consultation with the stakeholders involved in the community. So yes, with this intervention, we'll see giraffe population going up, because again, this park hosts the Maasai giraffe, which is highly and critically endangered in Kenya or in Africa. So these initiatives, if implemented, and they're being implemented slowly but surely, will ensure that our open spaces are protected. But again, is this really, do we stop at that? No, because today it's with Balala, who might have good intentions. The next time it might be with someone else who may not even see the sense of conserving wildlife, for instance. So again, I still insist on the role of media, which I really, really highly appreciate. And you guys have really helped us in this period to make Kenyans aware of these open spaces. So the
But
leadership
Reinhard,
ownership-
are those Kenyans going to benefit from this value that you're talking about?
Yes,
For instance,
yes,
look
yes.
at the numbers, and just going the same way that Nduh was asking, let's look at the numbers of the people who visit the Nairobi National Park on an annual basis. How would you put those numbers comparatively in the last 5 years?
The last 5 years, from looking at the data of Nairobi National Park, for instance, or just generally Kenya's particular areas, the tourists, the local tourists have been high. Actually, it's the highest income compared to the international tourism. I was also shocked when I saw this data. So it's a
Why were you shocked?
improving. I mean, generally before I tried. There was a time I was on media when I was trying to volunteer for KT and all that, and the reason why I left is because I was told that environmental story doesn't sell, and it's boring, and you either need to come in as a political something, take that route. Back in the 5 years back, that conservation of tourism was not something that Kenyans could really buy into. There's this perception that it's a white man thing or a Kenyan elite initiative or whichever. So, which again leads to the role of this private sector, the tourism industry. More Kenyans have won the tour companies and such initiatives. They take many Kenyans to these protected areas. So that appreciation of what we see and the people taking photos, sharing on social media and all that,
But
has led to more Kenyans visiting this particular area. So over the
But
last
if you
5
look at
years-
it comparatively, with a population of 4 million plus residents of Nairobi, vis-a-vis the number of people who go to the Nairobi National Park in any given month, can you say that the people of Nairobi are enjoying what they have here in the Nairobi National Park?
Yes, definitely. For instance, recently you saw a photo of a lion on top of a pile of some, a heap of soil and all that, looking into the SGR. It was communicating a lot, and it trended for 3 days locally. Kenyans were fighting for the park. It showed you that they loved what they saw. If they didn't like it,
Kenyans on social media, you mean, not Kenyans?
Not Kenya. Well, they're still Kenyans.
No,
All right.
Kenyans on social
They're still
media,
Kenyans.
I know I'm splitting hairs here, are a small representation of Kenyans generally.
Yeah, because I want to take you back into that issue. 4 million people who live in Nairobi, and they're the ones who breathe from this lung. Do they even visit that lung? How many people, for example, would you go into the thousands of acres who live in the Eastlands part of this city who would tell you that they have visited the Nairobi National Park?
Which I think I mentioned earlier as one of our current areas of approach is taking this ownership back to Kenyans. Right now we are trying to negotiate with the government to have, especially the school kids.
Which arm of government are you negotiating with?
The ministry.
Which
We start
ministry?
from there, go to the president, the Ministry of Balala, the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife.
But
We
if you think
discussed also,
think
right?
about it for a second,
Yes, yes.
SGR was not under the Ministry of Tourism. Neither was the Southern Bypass. Neither is the Immigration Department. These are different. These departments fall under different ministries. Is that not so?
Yes.
My question is, if you're talking to the ministries, should you not look at how the interrelationship of these ministries when it comes to issues of wildlife conservation and talk to each and every of these ministries as opposed to just one ministry?
Now, what happens in government is, that bureaucratic procedure. It, especially the Honorable Najib Balala, it would be nice if I got another minister to work with him before going through him. So right now, what we started, the first meeting that we had, I think, earlier in the year, he promised to work with the Minister of Transport. They were trying to come up with a framework between three ministries, transport, agriculture, and wildlife, because again, some initiatives proposed in agriculture, like certain insecticides or pesticides used, there was an institutional where they used some dangerous, toxic pesticide which harmed or killed a lot of birds and all that. It affects the wildlife sector. So we met, identified the challenges, and we're using him to reach through those other ministries. There's something called bureaucracy. So we don't have that mandate. We can go straight to the president, but if you ignore the middle level kind of, engagement from the down to the middle to the whatever to the top, I mean, we'll fall because they'll think more of we are trying to show his weaknesses or whatever to the big boss. So it's something that is ongoing, and through the National Wildlife Strategy, which you can go through, there is that initiative through this engagement with us, where they call the plans to have, they call it the campaign, the Kenya's Wildlife and Wildlife for Kenya's campaign, so which has bore fruits because they have this Mabingwa youth program targeting the less privileged youth and all that. It's a work in progress. It's not something like we can say 4 million people go to the park. We're also trying to make sure that someone from Dandora, someone from Kariobangi, someone from Kibra, which you're already working with anyway, the schools there, go there. So it's more of a work in progress. That's why these policies or national documents or strategies that have been implemented and launched by the minister, backed up by the president, we are working, making sure that they implement this. So it's a work in progress that through people like the media, which plays a key role in informing Kenyans on the benefits of the protected areas.
Reinhard, do you know how many people transit through JKA prior to COVID? Do you know how many people transited through JKA annually, on average? I'll tell you, it's around 6 million people, right? And the layover is around 4 hours.
Yes.
If you look at the proximity of JKIA and the national park, not far.
Yep.
If you look at countries like, say, Dubai, where you find ministries, that particular emirate area where ministries work together, you can land in Dubai, and if you have a long layover, you can actually leave the airport and actually go into the town and then come back. We don't seem to have such policies. I'm giving this as a specific example because if you have an advantage such as the one that we have, and you're talking about wanting visitors, and you actually have them, but all you do is you sort of like cloister them at the airport for all that length of time, when they could actually leave the airport, go somewhere else, generate an income for you. This happens when ministries cooperate and work together. Now, if
a government is focused, if a government is intended, it has the intention of utilizing this resource and seeing how this resource can help to sell the country, a government will do that. The same thing that I hear Reinhard expressing here. He's saying, so we go through one ministry and then we would say that this minister has promised to talk to his colleagues in the cabinet. Look, this is a resource that has been in Nairobi since when the population of Nairobi was less than 1 million.
Before we even knew it was called this place, called Nairobi,
before
and
Nairobi
before even Kenya
Nairobi,
became Kenya.
This was here. And over that period, we have not seen any concerted effort to, for example, market the Nairobi National Park to Nairobi residents. And here we are now. As you've mentioned, the strategic plan for the next 10 years for the management of the Nairobi National Park is introducing several other aspects. For example, it's saying, let's put up some high-end lodges within the park. When you hear high-end, you already hear that there's a specific target market that is being looked at. It just tells you that the players in this sector, their view of the Nairobi National Park is different from the view of everybody else in the Nairobi National Park. So why not just give a piece of this park to the people of Nairobi? Let us put up some housing estates there.
That will be of value.
Let us put up a running track.
Eric, that has already happened. If you know how far Nairobi National Park extended right from the airport, that left side of the road where you see all these go down the road, that was part of the national park.
Yeah, it went to the Bonyenyes who put up the industry.
Yes, so what you're saying has already happened.
I want the
Eric,
ordinary person to
Eric,
be able to go to Nairobi
what you're
National Park
suggesting,
and find water parks, find jogging tracks, and you fenced off the animals outside.
Eric, what you're saying has already happened with disastrous consequences. They will say they want to put running tracks and tortoise shacks or whatever it is that you call them. But the truth of the matter is they'll just put up buildings for people to live in or go down. We've seen it happening.
This is the
Yes.
Reinhard. If we want to look at this, and I think that maybe you can point through, because I don't
Yes.
think the importance of having something like this within the city is what we should be looking at now. I mean, that is clear. However, it can't be that the argument continually rests on the fact that it is unique. Just like
Yeah,
Eric
yeah.
said, there must be something more that can be done. Just like CT said also, like now coming out of the airport, if I have 10 hours to kill, there must be something that I will be able to do. And here's this resource less than 10 kilometers away from the airport that you can actually do something within, right? I'm saying it's great to talk about conservation. It's great to talk about protectionism, but there must be something more that you can do with it, because the danger that lies when you don't do something is that people will say, this is an idle piece of land. The 48 lions that are there can be relocated somewhere else and we do something else with it. So there should be much more that can be done, as opposed to, which is what it looks like, keeping on this choir shouting about protect the park, protect the park, protect the park, which is great. However,
Yes.
is there something
Yes.
more that can be done with it so that the value that lies within then is apparent to the people? Forget about foreign tourists. Nairobi.
And conservation is like
Is there
you who look at
is that possible?
as black rhino as something as endangered.
I think even the
Right, there's a
focus,
rhino.
if you ask me, the focus
a rhino.
on Nairobi National Park is good, it's excellent, but the focus should be Nairobi.
Exactly.
Yes.
The focus should be Nairobi.
Because if you look at East Africa and if you look at the world, Nairobi is probably one of the most livable cities on this planet. Nairobi.
Yep.
The temperature is near perfect. It's around 26 degrees. Dar es Salaam is hot. Addis Ababa is on a hill. 1/3 of Kampala is a swamp. I am not trying to put down these places. I'm simply saying there's a uniqueness that Nairobi holds that is an excellent selling point. So when you bring in the national park, it's that value addition now.
Yep.
exactly. It
But
can't-
Nairobi isn't even sold properly.
And this is why I go back and Reinhard, maybe you can answer this question in terms of the planning and all these other things, that a lot more can be done. A lot more can be done. And I can understand why it's necessary to have, the singing from the bleachers. But I think it's about time now that, this chorus needs to get onto the stage now and say, okay, we have these animals, it's a wonderful thing. We have this flora and fauna, endangered species that the world can come and see. There must be addition of value. Can there be
Definitely.
addition of value?
Definitely. And like I mentioned before, there's a lot of things that you're working on. When SGR happened, when wildlife was under the Ministry of Environment, and I remember the first meeting when it was taken back to tourism, we had a meeting with the CS, and the entire, what I call them, the high table, the high level, the CS, the PS, and all that, they mentioned that, quoting them, Reinhard, I remember seeing you on TV demonstrating against the SGR. There's no any cabinet meeting where the issue of Nairobi National Park was mentioned.
Yeah.
So it should be how much we lacked. The person who was leading this docket then never, took our issue serious. They got the order from above or from whichever ministry, they followed the order. So when he came in, the CS came in, Balala, we had a meeting. He said we need a strategy. We need to do this. We need to do that and all that. So when he came in, we worked properly and developed the national wildlife strategy, which had good intentions, and all those things that you're talking about, value addition and all that, were all included. So what are you doing right now? Trying to make them live by the book. What they did that time, the original intention of the policy, make them implement what we have. In terms of improving the value of Nairobi National Park and all that, it is a role. I think we need to spearhead this, but when that ownership is taken by Kenyans, the media houses, covering all these issues at prime hour, for instance, such as this, making more Kenyans aware of that. It's more of an integrated approach. So right now, what you're working on and still engaging the minister on is to have a framework between the Ministry of Livestock, because we not only want to focus on Nairobi National Park, we have Amboseli, which is also the next to face huge threat if we fail here. Because whatever happens in Nairobi National Park now will determine the fate of 9 other parks. So we are working on having a framework of engagement between the Ministry of Transport, which has been the major culprit, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, and the Ministry of Livestock. So it's a work in progress. But again, I can assure you there has been an improvement over time. Which is still,
so you think the
still
thing it's actually getting better, as you say?
It's getting better. If you look at those documents, there's a national planning framework that was launched. It's a national wildlife, whatever.
Yeah.
So we make them see the need, and they listen. We have the policy developed, and then of course, because there's corruption, these are politicians. So then we just keeping an eye on them.
Reinhard Bonke, thank you very much for speaking to us. Asante sana. Reinhard Bonke is a wildlife conservationist. Thank you for all your insights this morning on conservation of the Nairobi National Park and all the other ecological areas in this country. Asante sana, and wish you a good day. This is the Situation Room on Spice FM and KTN Home. Time for a quick break.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
I mean, and it's the same thing that you're saying. It's all about how you package this park. For as long as people look at the park and they see it's a place that they never enter because it's a place where tourists go, and I'm not a tourist, so I'm not entering there, and therefore they don't even get to interact with it. As long as there's no community involvement in this park, then it's just going to be one of those things.
It's true. If you don't have the buy-in from people, forget about it. Because it sounds like something so comical or even rudimentary, because I thought of the person who is struggling for their daily bread thinking, all right, there's a giraffe somewhere that might be inconvenienced if the park is taken away. And actually the thought never crosses their mind. It really doesn't. So until people start to see the value in something like this, you might as well forget that argument. Because
When do you begin to inculcate this idea?
It had to have been from a very, very
You
low level.
let's go back to school.
It had to have been at school, because it's going to be very difficult for you to convince a grown man or woman the importance of a rhino breeding sanctuary.
What?
Where would it ever feature?
How does it even?
Without them having grown up with that kind of value embedded in their thinking or in their psyche. It would be very difficult then to try and inculcate that in the future. Without somebody who don't have a broad view or broad understanding of why conservation, for example, is important, or why it is that when you look at a unique position that Nairobi has, for example, in the entire region, for them to get an understanding or an appreciation of why that is important. If you didn't do that from the time that they were younger, if you didn't do that from the time that they had this blank canvas upon which they were learning, then it would be very difficult to do it later. It would be hard. And that's why then you will need the endless and incessant campaigning and building of awareness in the future. And if you're not ready to do that in the future, when you didn't do it in the past, then unfortunately it looks like a losing battle.
When you look at it and, all the commercial interests surrounding the city, and especially even the dispersal areas, we talk about the entire area of the Athi Kapiti Plains and how EPZ was put up there. We've seen new housing estates coming up there. Yes, the area has not been fenced off from the park, but people who live around that area just see the animals as a nuisance. I mean, I've lived here, and what I see is zebras and gazelles trotting onto my garden every morning, and this is a nuisance. We've got to sell a different thing to them so that everybody gets that sense of pride of knowing that I'm living with the pride of lions within the park.
There you go.
And this is something that is a heritage of the country. This is a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think one of the things that I'd say about, the revocation of that appointment is should have allowed that.
Allow the conversation to happen.
Allow contrarian views to come in, because it'll challenge how else you think about tourism in this country.
Now, this discussion definitely has to be allowed to go on.
It has to. Because guess what? Then, unfortunately, if it doesn't happen and then people's awareness is not being tweaked or people's thinking then is not being allowed to develop, that what you happen is that a decision could be taken that would be a detrimental loss to the country. Unfortunately. And that's what would happen.
You know, when people think of national parks, they think Mara, Amboseli, Nairobi,
Savo.
Mount Kenya, finished.
Done.
Man, we have many national parks
Yep.
in this country. And what is surprising is most Kenyans may not even know this. They probably have a national park in their backyard.
True.
Not too far away from them. But they simply never visit it. It doesn't even occur to them that this is a place they can go to.
Meanwhile, it's a selling point of this country outside of this country, and it's a thing that many people come here
Now,
to
this is
see.
where now the county governments come in because these national parks are within their boundaries.
Making people understand, there's joy and there's value in going to interact and see the flora, the fauna. Not just the big lions, the big cats, but also seeing even birds. You can actually create a whole community of bird watchers and bird lovers from students who keep going to the parks or to these forests to just see the birds. Do we have a birding culture in the country? No, we don't. Not to a great extent. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Stick around. In the next hour, we have more conversations. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM. Kisumu.
Okay, let's see what it looks like in certain parts of the city. It's building up in some areas, but it's not too terrible. Let's look at Jogorodo. It was building up and getting to the city centre from the City Stadium roundabout, either to industrial area or then towards the CBD. It's not too terrible. And on Thika Road, getting into the CBD as well, it looks pretty good. Mombasa Road is not giving up those terrible vibes, thank goodness. It's not too crazy as it was yesterday, and it's moving along. We not have much traffic this morning. We'll take a look at what it looks like in a short while. Not to forget, you can also tell us what's happening on your side of things. Spice FMKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. We'd like to see what's going on in your neck of the woods. Nothing too crazy, we hope. If there are accidents or incidents, let us know. Alternatives that you can use that we can share with other people.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the
Now 2 minutes
Situation
after
Room.
8, and thank you
The
very much for tuning into the Situation Room right here on Spice FM and KTN Home. On Spice FM, we are in Nairobi on 94.4, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 in Njeri, and Malindi 97.7. We also live stream the show on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as live streaming the show on our digital platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And also remember, for the next hour as well, we are still live on KTN Home. Now, let's talk about the fight against COVID-19 and the government response in the fight against COVID-19, especially since earlier this year when we saw that the WHO declared COVID-19 a global pandemic and the government started putting in place measures to deal with COVID-19 in the event that it landed here. a number of things that happened. Many pronouncements by the president, formation of a national emergency response committee chaired by the cabinet secretary for health, including other cabinet secretaries who are involved in various aspects that would help in the fight against COVID-19, creation of task force that brings in expertise and people from the counties. So there was proper structure put in place. And then when the first case was announced in the country on the 13th, Friday, the 13th of March, 2020, measures were then announced immediately by the president. 1, close schools. 2, let's, as much as possible, avoid going to work if you can avoid going to work. And in fact, even he directing his own government workers, try as much as possible not to go to work. So people started working from home. And then now the conversation started now coming back from the population. We need support from the government. We are losing our jobs. We have lost our incomes. We have shut down our businesses, especially those in the hospitality and other sectors. And all this has brought us to where we are now, 127 days later. Is it 127 or 167 days later? We are at a point where very many questions have now emerged. So looking back, who knew what when? What decision was made by who when? Why? What was followed up by that decision? We have received money in terms of support from development partners, from the World Bank, from other well-wishers. We have received donations in kind. Where did they go? Reports start emerging. Oh, these things arrived at the JKIA and then they found their way out of the JKIA in a manner which is not clearly defined. All these issues have made Kenyans start questioning what exactly has happened in the fight against COVID-19. And one such person, one such national leader who's come out strongly is the NARC Kenya party leader, Martha Karua, who yesterday had a press conference and she released a statement and she said, look, we need answers. And these answers must be given by the president as the head of government and other government officers. And Martha Karua is now joining us on the line. Good morning, Martha.
Morning.
Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning and welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Yesterday we saw you and you came out guns blazing. You basically took us around what has happened in the past in the fight against COVID-19, and then you came up with a list of demands and said among the things that we want is clear and proper leadership from the top and answers and audit of what has happened. Where is our money? Where are our PPEs? What made you get to this point?
I think things have been building up. We've had reports that the PPEs donated to Kenya by people, among them Jack Ma, found their way to the cartels and were the ones being sold back to the Ministry of Health. We've had reports of hospitals across the country not having PPEs for the health workers. Infections for the health workers are now past the 700 mark. We have had several deaths, and all this against the background of many other donations in cash and kind from local and international players. And this now calls for accountability from the government. We need to know what has been received, where has it gone? If it's money, how has it been allocated? If it is in kind, to which institutions did it go? And what are the quantities? This is what we need to know. And this is a process of accountability provided for in our constitution and in our laws. It is the very least we can demand as citizens. And the press statement yesterday by NARC Kenya, which I read, is demanding on behalf of the many voiceless Kenyans accountability from our government. We're saying enough is enough, and we are saying that the responses of the government so far are totally inadequate. I want to say that the government started well by giving the people the protocols that they should follow, giving us information about COVID and what is going on, but we must have moved beyond that, beyond news bulletins to action. The preparedness of the county governments is wanting across the country. The preparedness of our public hospitals is wanting. And the way the government is managing the rising cases is wanting. It is time to speak up, and that's what we did yesterday, calling for accountability on behalf of the many Kenyans who do not have the space that we have to demand this accountability.
Martha, do you think that the response that comes will answer these demands? Because, like you say, there are lots of people who've been complaining. There have been questions that have been asked. There have been murmurings and rumblings for the last 2 months, ever since we saw some crazy figures that couldn't be explained. And now there are more people who are infected with COVID. There are more people who need help when it comes to medical facilities, even health workers alone. Do you think that they are going to answer these demands? Because just as an example, in the media we had the other day, where across counties people are saying, yes, money has been spent and it has been used for the purpose for which it was intended. And that's where the answer stops. Do you think these demands will make these answers come out clearer?
I think our duty as citizens is to keep demanding accountability, to keep raising the bar. If the government responds appropriately, then we are able to know what is happening and we are able to engage. If the response is inappropriate, then we have to keep on demanding accountability as we are entitled to. I think we cannot start from the position of saying, will they answer? Should we ask? We must ask as we are entitled to. Answering is their business. If they don't, we shall keep on pressuring. And I'm hoping that many Kenyans will find their voices so that collectively we can pressurize this government to do the right thing for Kenyans. People are suffering. We are all threatened by this pandemic, and we are seeing inadequate response and abuse of public funds. We need to push the government to step up.
But Ms. Kadrua, when I see, for example, one of the issues that you're demanding here, full disclosure, transparency and accountability for all COVID-19 funds, resources and equipment from all sources, including loans, grants, donations, in-kind support, both locally and internationally. You want this to be published and made accessible of the beneficiaries of the government COVID-19 relief funds. In what format would you like this response to come? I would expect that this is something that goes into Parliament, and the government can say that we are already in conversation with Parliament. Whenever we are asked, whenever we are summoned by parliamentary committees, we present ourselves and we answer these questions.
The Constitution allows us individually or collectively to demand this accountability. This is over and above what Parliament, our elected representatives, can do. We exercise authority as Kenyans, and we also donate the same authority to Parliament, but leaving a residue in ourselves so that we also can be able to raise our voices. So telling me it's in Parliament is not enough, but if they, for instance, were to publish it in their website, if the minister was to give a statement and it's located in a portal where we can find it, because it's not possible to serve each Kenyan with an answer, let them make it as public as possible. That's all that we are demanding. The minister accepted that there are cartels in Afia, or is it Mafia House? And we need him to tell us, not just to tell us there are cartels. I have done 1, 2, 3. We need the president speaking out. People close to him have been mentioned, not once. This is repeated mention of the same people. Can he tell us what he is doing about it? Or is the war against graft selective and only applies to people who are not close to him? This really ought to be an embarrassment for the president, and he needs to come out and be accountable to Kenyans. That's all that we are saying. And for the Ministry of Health, PR tours to counties that are doing better are not sufficient. We need the CS to visit counties that are not doing well, and therefore to tell us how the ministry is going to partner with those counties to ensure that their state of preparedness improves. This is what we are looking for. A pandemic is not something that individual counties can fight on their own. There must be collective action where the national government is closely collaborating with counties. And that's what we are looking for. Strategy of fighting the pandemic has not changed since they started giving us the daily news bulletin. The figures are rising. We are now close to 27,000. Just a few numbers are below 7,000, 27,000. The strategy surely has to change. Something has to give. And that is what we are saying. We need to know each cent received on behalf of Kenyans, either as a loan, a grant, a donation, we need to know. We also need to know the money is mopped up from the budget by way of supplementary budget, the budget that is there, and we need to see reallocation of money to the fight of the pandemic.
Would this, however, not just be diverting the attention and the focus of the government from fighting COVID-19 to ticking boxes and satisfying the population and saying, we need to give you all this information? After all, we have the Auditor General's office, which will come in and seek answers, and it'll get the answers. We have the parliamentary committees that seek answers, and they get answers. And when these answers go to these public bodies, then they are accessible to the public.
I think on this close to the 10th anniversary of the Constitution, the state should be on the forefront of informing Kenyans, not throwing doubts on the citizens' right to demand for accountability. The government on its own attempts to do daily briefing. So how is a demand for accountability a diversionary tactic or diverting attention? I expect you to be affirming the citizens' right to demand these answers, especially in the wake of allegations of corruption right at the heart of the Ministry of Health. And this accountability should be a matter of course. The ministry, anything it does ought to be documented. So it should be very easy to get officers in the ministry to compile the data that is required and to put it in a public place where we can know. How is it diverting attention? Asking that the donations in kind by Jack Ma, for instance, will be shown how they were distributed. Surely there must be a record somewhere. So that we stop thinking or hearing tales that they were received at the airport by cartels with authority of insiders at the ministry, and they are the very same ones that have been sold to KEMSA at exorbitant prices. What would be better for the ministry and for Kenyans than clearing the air on such matters? And also the use of cash. No cash is disbursed without a record. So what we are asking for is not rocket science, and it is a right in the Constitution. It is a principle of prudent management of public resources. You must have a record of everything we do.
That you ask, I believe, is appropriate and not only timely but appropriate. Where the bottleneck and the issue comes in is this. Such questions have been asked before. Civil society has asked these questions, has pressurized. But the results that we've received when these things have been asked seem to be the same. How do we know that this demand that you've now put across will bring about different results from the ones we've experienced in the past?
I hope you're not suggesting that merely because the government has failed before, we should now be complacent. Our right, our duty as citizens is to keep asking, keep on knocking on that door, keep demanding accountability. And I tell you, the more the voices, the government is going to be compelled to come out and answer these questions.
Also, the reason why I was bringing in
other Kenyans to join and raise their voices, demanding accountability from this government. And we've been at this for a while. You do remember that even in yesteryears, when we were demanding that the democratic space be enlarged, it looked futile. In the end, always, the voice of the people triumphs. I'm therefore confident that we are on a journey that we are going to succeed and that we have to keep sustaining the pressure.
I guess what you're hearing here is the frustration from media and public in terms of whenever questions are raised, the answers that come in the same format. That we have responded, we have presented a report. We have responded to the Auditor General's queries. The Auditor General's report is out. What other format would we get these answers immediately, so that we don't have to wait until the Auditor General goes to conduct a special audit, like she said the other day, or until Parliament conducts a special hearing on this particular matter?
We have not asked for the Auditor General's report. We just want a record. Those are the records the Auditor General may use in his audit. But for now, we are saying give us records. And there are remedies in the same constitution and in our laws when the government fails to respond to the public. I am not going to sit here and say we will do 1, 2, 3, because this is not a journey of Martha Karua or of NAC Kenya. It's a journey of many Kenyans. And I know there will be multiple actions. Kenyans are active. We've seen them exercise their rights and enforce them in different forums. And I'm saying it is about time, dear Kenyans. Let us do this together. We must get accountability.
How would we rally Kenyans to together ask these questions of the government? Now, you've worked in government before. You've seen, even when you were serving in government, civil society, for example, and other cadres of Kenyans would ask questions, and the government would have similar responses to what we are seeing today. How would we rally the public so that it can get better answers?
Not true. The government I served and the period I served, answers were forthcoming. Maybe not from every ministry, but when I was in water ministry, my duty was to give more information than you have demanded, because that's what is expected of me. When I was Ministry of Justice, I gave information that was not even favorable to the government and even to some of my colleagues. We must come out of the mindset that the government must be minimalist in the information it gives. We must become transparent and accountable as demanded by our constitution and as demanded by Kenyans. And government must learn to bear all. When you see people not bearing all, they are confirming the corruption and the mismanagement that we are talking about.
So with what's happening with COVID now, this is not just a problem that started with COVID. This is obviously something that has been there when we talk about inherent and endemic corruption in a government. So it's another way in which this has been shown. So are you saying that this presents another opportunity to keep the government, or to ask the government then to be righteous, whereby there are piles and piles of examples where this has happened before? What would make them sit up and pay attention?
We recognize that this is not the first time, and we did acknowledge that 2016 there was a big scandal at Mafia House, which the press has referred to as the Mafia House scandal, and which today answers are not forthcoming. The fact that there have been many corruption scandals which have almost numbed the senses of right-thinking Kenyans is no reason for us to sit back and sort of accept the situation. We are saying we must keep pressuring the government. We must keep calling it to account. We cannot afford to be complacent. And now that they are shamelessly looting money and equipment meant to fight this pandemic, threatening our very existence, and failing to support Kenyans who cannot put on their plates. Therefore, a double existential threat: the threat of the pandemic, the threat of livelihood. This is a time to keep the pressure up. The government has to respond to the demands of the people, and if it doesn't, the people must keep on pressuring. A breaking point will soon come if appropriate response is not done.
Demanding accountability. That's what we're doing this morning. And joining us is NARC Kenya Party leader Martha Karua. We are talking about accountability for everything that has been, the decisions that have been made, the funds that have been utilized in the fight against COVID-19. The party yesterday came out with a statement which was read by the party leader Martha Karua, in which they are demanding various answers. They're saying, for example, we need leadership on the issue of education. We need answers on how money has been spent so far in the fight against COVID-19. We need answers on the decisions being made at the county level on the fight against COVID-19. All this is what we're discussing this morning right here on Spice FM, broadcasting on Spice FM and also on KTN Home and on our digital platforms. Time to take a quick break at 23 minutes past 8. This conversation returns. Keep it right here.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. The weather with Spice FM.
All right, still looking at partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi. We're looking at temperatures of 14 and sunny conditions all through today. Chance of partly cloudy conditions only later on in the day. In Nakuru, it's 16 degrees and partly cloudy for most parts of today, going to a high of 25 and a chance of rain later on. Looking then into Eldoret, where it's partly cloudy at 15 degrees. And also the forecast is for rain later with highs of 22. Let's look at the coastal towns, where in Mombasa, 23 degrees and partly cloudy conditions for most parts of the day, going up to a high of 28. And in Malindi, where it was raining this morning, still a bit of a drizzle here and there. We'll see that drizzle continue for most parts of today, going to a high then of 29. All right, in Kisumu, it's sunny conditions at 20 degrees, going up to a high of 27. And we're likely to see some rain showers there later on, if what we are told now is the truth. Later on in Kampala, there will be rains. Currently, partly cloudy conditions with highs of 28. And in Dar es Salaam, highs of 31. Partly cloudy conditions with a slight haze over most parts of the town. We're looking into Johannesburg, where at 8 degrees now, warming up ever so slightly. We'll see highs of 17 and lows of 4 degrees. And in Lagos, it's overcast this morning. Chances of rain very high, with highs of 28 and lows of 18.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, what once was 4 lanes on Kiambu Road is now officially 6, and it's crazy trying to get to Muthaiga. Shikana is what we're being told. Trying to get to the superhighway is not going to be so easy if you're on Kiambu Road now, but you're going to have to pepper that with a bit of patience this morning as you get onto the superhighway. Then you get into the CBD without too much of a headache. All right, coming off Mombasa Road also is not too terrible at the moment. We will then join with the Uhuru Highway right around the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. And all the way to Westlands, it's moving along slowly, not a bumper-to-bumper situation, so it shouldn't be too painful. The Eastern and Southern bypass is up and open and ready for use this morning. Not too crazy. We'll take a look at about half an hour and see how that has changed. Help us out here if you see something where people might get stuck. Give them alternate routes, or at least shout out where you might be. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. The conversation continues. We are talking about accountability in the fight against COVID-19. NARC Kenya yesterday released a statement which was read by the party leader Martha Karua, in which they are demanding accountability. Talking about, look, we have seen in our fight against COVID-19 and what the government has put in place as measures in the fight against COVID-19, allocated substantial amounts of money and resources in this fight against COVID-19. But is that enough? Also, what is the progress of implementation of what has been allocated in that fight against COVID-19? There's also what the statement is also asking for, Martha, and this is on reassigning some of the funds that have been earmarked for other projects into the fight against COVID-19.
Yeah, because when you have a pandemic or something unusual, even in a household, you have to reallocate resources. Nobody could have forecasted that at a time like this, we'll be battling a global pandemic. And we have seen the government move to reallocate. But then we are seeing so much being given, for instance, to intelligence, sometimes more than to health, in the reallocated monies. Even when they gave an account of how they used the first, was it several billion?
Yep.
More money had gone to NIS than had gone to KEMRI or to any other medical institution. And we are saying, yes, we need the gathering of intelligence, but that is the core business of NIS, and they've been having their budget. Nothing unusual has happened in their quarter. Something unusual has happened in health. We are seeing misallocation, mismanagement of what the priorities are. And we are saying this is an area the government has to look at. No wonder then that most facilities are not having adequate or quality PPEs. No wonder most facilities across the country are in a state of unpreparedness for managing this pandemic.
Can I ask this question? I mean, quite aside from the authority that our Constitution gives us in making the sort of demands that we are discussing here, what else does our Constitution legally allow us to do in ensuring that, apart from demanding, we actually get the results that we want?
I think there's a lot of things. It's COVID time. People can organize. There are many ways of making a government pay attention to people. I don't have to spell it out. And we've seen individual citizens going to court. We've seen people taking memorandums to offices. I don't have to spell it out here. There's a lot of action a free people can take. And it's been taken in the past, will be taken in the future, not in Kenya, but across the globe, when push comes to shove.
Do you think that push has come to shove? Because I'm always of the opinion that Kenyans have not felt it to the point whereby they feel they're at the wall. Because perhaps we would see a different reaction or a more enforced reaction across board if they really had. Not tired of this just yet.
I think it is not fair to say that you're not seeing reaction from Kenyans. Normally, even in the history of this country and many other countries, the silent majority will have reached a boiling point, and you can only know by listening. And I know the intelligence is telling the state how things are. How they respond is their business. If people have no food, some of the indicators is rising petty crime as people try to get food. Many indicators. And we know across the board we've seen people who cannot put food on their tables. Yesterday, even as we were having that press conference, the offices are normally not open during this COVID season. We just have a caretaker. But yesterday, because we were open, some people walked in, and there was a man who'd been thrown out of his premises because he couldn't pay rent. He's lost his job.
Yeah.
He can't feed his family. There was a woman, and these are not the only cases. We are confronted with cases every day. And I think almost every other Kenyan has had a cry from a fellow Kenyan of not coping in these circumstances. I think it's really bad. And if those in leadership do not know, then they are forewarned. They're sitting on a time bomb.
Like you've said, they receive daily briefings from the intelligence, and intelligence is obviously gathering this intelligence from the people. And so those in high office have a clear picture of what's happening on the ground. What is it that will make them not act fast enough or well enough to address this?
It's just impunity. For instance, the recent polls, 3 of them, have indicated that only 1% of Kenyans think BBI is a priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, they continue devoting money to such a futile exercise. I don't mind politicians trying to market ideas to Kenyans. But at a time there is a pandemic, come on, pull that money back and support Kenyans who can barely make it.
Mm-hmm.
Use it to equip hospitals. Tell us how much you are using. It's our money. It's not personal money you're using. We must demand answers. So just little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think which show the indifference with which the government is handling the pandemic and the issues that concern Kenyans.
Impunity, indifference.
Yes.
Are you saying that then the government doesn't really care for its own survival
Exactly.
in office?
Not for its own survival. They think that they can continue putting their knee on the throats of Kenyans until the last breath. That's the way I see it.
When you were in government, how would you deal? I mean, because we talk about now that the intelligence is available across board. You know what the heartbeat of Kenyans is at any particular time because you're given that information. How would you deal with something that came to your desk? I mean, sitting in cabinet and you know that this is what happened. How then was the response for whatever it was?
You raise your voices in cabinet, which will inform government response. And if you're totally unhappy about responses to matters and you feel you cannot be party to, I left government at that point. But I know that initially the government I served was very responsive. But when they became totally indifferent, that's the point at which I left. Because it's untenable.
I want to focus on other elected leaders, and these are members of parliament, both in the National Assembly and the Senate, who are supposed to be, like the watchdog of the public on how the government is running its programs. What would you say? I mean, this is the same parliament that has passed a budget that is allocating the amounts of money that you're saying allocating to intelligence and other areas, and not allocating, like you say, enough to the fight against COVID. What's their role in shouldering this blame and this burden?
I would say that they have also not handled their responsibility properly. We have seen the Senate demanding accountability, and also Parliament did demand accountability, but there is no follow-through. Those reports have not been given to Parliament. You remember the questions about the mandazis and tea?
Yep.
Answers have not come. And I wouldn't be surprised if we were to later find that a member of parliament or two are also entrepreneurs in the matters. And I am saying that the current parliament has as many entrepreneurs as the outside has. And when people start to focus on self-aggrandizement instead of service to the people, then the service to the people becomes the casualty. And across government, because government is the executive, parliament, the judiciary, across government, the bar is not raised high because there is insider involvement is happening. So the people are left to ask the questions themselves.
Mheshimiwa, you said that when you were in government, the government that you served in that time began really well. What happened?
Yeah.
What is it? And I'm asking an academic question. What happens to people who begin so well and then turn out to be some of the worst leaders that the country can ever actually even think or talk about?
it's always self-interest. And when the capture is government-wide, and when it is more people in government, not less, then it leads to a collapse of service delivery. No government is perfect, but I know that when the first Kibaki government started, a majority were totally consumed by changing the way things were. And that's why change did occur and began to occur. Then contamination slipped in, and which manifested itself more the second term during the coalition government. All pretenses were dropped. And again, self-interest took over. So it is up to the public to keep holding the accountability bar high, to pressure government and individual ministers to perform. And that if the accountability bar is pushed high, then it will not be so attractive for a majority to dive into corruption, to not dive into corruption, which is what appears to be happening.
So how low do you think?
Billionaires every day when a majority are sinking into poverty.
How low do you think this accountability bar is right now?
It's totally low because even in elections, you have seen people electing characters they know to have a very poor record in accountability. And this is across the board, from the lowest to the top. I think we need to have a conversation with ourselves. What is our role beyond demanding accountability? How can we get a government that performs better? What sort of people do we need? These are the conversations we must have over and above the demand for accountability.
We are seeing demands for accountability, for instance, in Lebanon, where the citizens are out in the street and they've been demanding accountability. They've been demanding that they get a government that is responsive to their needs. For a very long time, they still haven't gotten the answers that they want. Okay, so they keep changing a government. Now the Prime Minister and his government have resigned. Do you see a similar situation getting to a head in this country? Because you said if they don't heed, then we're going to get to that bursting point.
Yeah, maybe Lebanon is not the only example, and its history is different. There's a civil war that keeps on, civil war situation that has been there for as long as I can remember. But we have seen many other countries, people coming out. I think the best would be the Sudan, where people came out and as a result, the regime of Bashir fell. We've seen actions in other places, and we also remember demands for accountability in Kenya during the Moi era. It didn't get to a street revolution, but the government agreed to amend Section 2A of the Constitution and return political pluralism. So there's many ways nations react, and I know Kenyans have a breaking point, and the chickens will come home to roost if the government does not heed the voices of the people, the needs of the people.
When we talk about accountability, Mheshimiwa, we have all these bodies that exist within government that are intended to ensure that the very things that you are asking for is done. I mean, we've talked about the Auditor General, but we have other agencies that actually deal with this. How do you gauge their role in fighting and ensuring that the sort of accountability that you are asking about is actually brought to the fore?
I just want to agree with you that most of the bodies, and quite a number of them constitutional, are actually sleeping on the job. We have multi-agencies that could be dealing with this matter. The constitutional commissions, the commission on, all those commissions do have a chair and they do have meetings together. Issues of poor service to the people is a question of human rights. I would like to hear voices of the human rights, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. I would like to hear the Commission on Administration of Justice. But these bodies, their voices are totally muted. And you will remember that the past chairs of those commissions made those commissions get known by Kenyans. We are seeing a lot of complacency creeping in, even in the institutions, including investigation agencies that should be working for the good of Kenyans. And as they say, the fish rots from the head. That is why we must ask the president and his government to step up the plate, because we need a rescue from the situation we are in. And I'm inviting all Kenyans of goodwill, speak up, let's add our voices. It is not futile, it will work. In the end, the people always triumph.
I hear you say then, I mean, just from what you're saying, then it can get to an expected end, that if you just keep at it and you keep pointing out and calling out those things, whereby people previously may have been afraid, you know, for the very real threat that could come to them if they, you know, were the whistleblower in some of these things, or those who continue to agitate for change. But I hear you saying that Kenyans should then really begin to embrace this idea of constantly speaking out, regardless of what it is. If you see something wrong, speak out about it. So moving towards kind of a lobbyist society or an agitation for change society.
I will say moving to a society that demands accountability. We want to see citizens questioning their county governments, questioning their national government. There should be no place to hide for people who are mismanaging public resources. And if we step up the pressure, it is going to work, and it will work in the end. We saw last week, Twitter only made CS Barala reverse an appointment. We've also had short victories here and there, and sustained, which is just an indication that sustained calls for accountability do yield results at the end.
You talked about
we
the
should
fact.
Never give up.
You talked about the fact that then Kenyans make decisions then when it comes to the vote. Why do you think then that seeing all these things happening blatantly now, with COVID as an example, that when it comes to the ballot, the decisions of putting, you know, the same people in positions over and over again still happens? Why do you think that is?
I don't think it's going to happen again, but it has happened. It is disappointing, but the confusion is brought in by leadership. And I always say that when we were battling to remove the KANU regime during the Moi era, one thing was very distinct, that only KANU dished out money during elections. The opposition had no money, yet Kenyans used to elect us. But after we ousted KANU and came into power in 2002, 2003, the next general election, which was 2007, where the government had split and was battling itself, the opposition appeared to have more money than the government in that campaign. That is the ODM. And I think from that time, we confused Kenyans, because both those in government and outside government had money. So from then on, it became a confusion. It's like people think that when you say you are buying, a bag of money is put into your hands to take to the voters. We will have to have a conversation that money during elections is actually a trap, because those handouts cannot give you service for 5 years. It's better to elect value-based leadership instead of election based on handouts. These are things Kenyans know, but because they despair that any change can come out of elections, they behave contrary to their beliefs. We need to give hope to each other. And when Kenyans see there is a critical mass that is demanding for a better Kenya, for accountability even in elections, then people will be encouraged to behave differently. I saw it happen in 2002 when we ousted Moi. When the National Rainbow Coalition came into being after a group broke off from KANU, led by Raila Odinga, people now had hope that the opposition is sizable enough to remove the government. And everything changed. Therefore, if Kenyans of goodwill, Kenyans who really want to see accountability speak up, a critical mass develops, it is possible to change this country. And I know we will change this country. The silent majority. We just need to keep encouraging one another.
Thank you very much, Martha Karua, for speaking to us this morning and also for raising these issues out in the open. As we come to the conclusion of this conversation, we'd like to give you a moment. Speak directly to the president and, pass on this message that you'd like to pass on to the president. What is it that you'd like him to do?
Mr. President, you are where you are in the highest office in the land on behalf of Kenyans. You preside over service or disservice of Kenyans. This is your last term. What do you want your legacy to be? Respond to the needs of Kenyans is the least that is expected of you. Stop the corruption in your government. Stop corruption in the use of resources meant for the health of Kenyans. Do your job. You can do it. You know it. The ball is in your court. This will be your legacy.
Thank you very much. NARC Kenya Party Leader Martha Karua, who's been speaking to us this morning, raising issues of concern and demanding accountability for everything that is going around the fight against COVID-19, from accountability on the allocation of funds, from the accountability on the usage of those funds, from accountability on the decisions that are made, from accountability even on the protection of healthcare workers and others. And we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning, Martha, and we wish you a great day. And thank you very much for tuning in to their show this morning on Spice FM as well as KTN Home. We want to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home. We'll be back on Spice FM. We'll continue this conversation until 10 o'clock. The Situation Room is a weekly morning talk show. This is the only full-on talk show on Kenyan radio every morning. And we hope that you'll be joining us again tomorrow, KTN Home. Good morning, 10 minutes to 9.
Spice FM. Njeri.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Well, the conversation continues.
Mornings done right.
7.9 Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, Njeri 90.9, and Malindi 97.7. In the room this and every morning is Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, and CT Muga. CT, so you've heard of the NARC Kenya Party Leader is saying any of those things that's unreasonable?
No, there's nothing that the NARC Kenya Party Leader has said which is unreasonable. And it sounds like, it even sounds blasé. It sounds like what she's saying is pedestrian and just repeating what people know. But she is right. Repetition brings about emphasis. And emphasis is how you get people to not just hear and understand, but to also own an idea. So this is not something you let up on. This is something you continuously talk about and you don't let up. In that respect, she's 100% right.
Don't you feel that, they may just get used already? Those in power are used to people asking questions and they give you half-baked answers and you move on. And you come back and you ask again and, they give you the same answer and you move on. When do you think...
That's what appears to happen.
Irritated.
Let me... why don't I give an example? Not very long ago, there was what I will call for purpose of our discussion a presidential decree on how certain things should we say, work in terms of governance and managing departments within our government. The matter was taken to court. You see, we do have a judicial system which works. There are those who say it doesn't work. There are those who say it's a bottleneck in the fight against corruption. I actually am not among the people who believe that. But every time we have such a discussion, what comes to my mind is this democracy we speak of, and we speak of so lovingly and longingly, is actually being put to the test. Leaders are being challenged. That may seem commonplace in Kenya because we do it all the time. It isn't. It's an important aspect of our democracy. We can challenge the presidency, we can challenge the government, we can challenge our courts, we can challenge government agencies. You can challenge.
That's all well and good. But I'm sitting from the point of, say, you are challenging, but then you just become like noise. It's kelele achura.
If you start from the perspective that their place is not very far from this country, even around our neighbors, where you don't dare, that simple challenge, you don't dare, then I would say it is progress. But the question you're asking is, apart from just the challenge, what else?
Yeah, what else?
I'm saying,
how do you make this cow stop drinking water just because you're a frog in the pond?
I'm afraid you're not going to stop that cow from drinking water if you're a frog. No. But if you're many frogs and you sit by the waterfront, that cow will not be able to drink water. The alternative is to trample on all of you so that you can drink the water, and then the water will be sullied. The point I'm trying to make is this. There is a breaking point, and the breaking point doesn't have to end in violence. No. Hence the question, what does our Constitution allow us to do? What are we allowed by the Constitution? We see some of it, people are allowed to go to court. We see civil society. We see civil disobedience. These are things that are allowed. Remember, even our civil disobedience has been fought. So, when you talk about people reaching a point where they cannot bear this anymore, believe me, they will act. We've seen how civil disobedience works in this country.
Slowly but surely, but at some point.
Oh, this one's not even surely. It's not even slowly. Surely. It isn't slowly.
There will be movement.
My friend, it is really very difficult to talk to people who are hungry. It is very, very difficult to talk to people who do not know what is going to happen tomorrow. It's very, very difficult to talk to people and convince them with the same words you've been using. And with every hearing of the words, their circumstances just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
It's also very difficult to talk to people who you've made promises to that have been unfulfilled.
Continuously.
And then now you want them to hear you in a different circumstance. Very, very difficult to get them in the same frame of mind. The way in which it has been happening, interestingly enough, you get to the point where, breaking point becomes breaking point. And then you say, well, it's unfortunate that we can't even hear what it is that you're saying. And I think we've seen evidence of this. If you just want to give the first COVID case when it came about, what was the first reaction from many Kenyans? That we've seen this so many times that it must be a lie. It must be another reason for government to be able to steal money. And so for me, that would be indicative of a reality that says that Kenyans are getting to the point whereby they're not going to be able to just take it as it is presented to them and will want to do something about it. But I also see that sometimes the repetition then exhausts most Kenyans.
Yeah.
And we'll say, you know what? Well, this is what we expect, and that's what it's going to be. But then I hear this message whereby it needs to be continuous. It needs to be repeated.
So it gets a
over
fresh
and over.
injection from somebody of the caliber of Martha Karua, then it becomes alive again.
And it becomes alive again. And
Get
then you
tired,
take it and then you run with it. You get tired.
Take a break.
But don't give up.
No, take a break, renew your mind, come back again.
But the government is very good at responding to this with giving you, it promised you this and then it's not delivered that, but it gives you something else.
The thing is this, it's moving, which means it's hearing you.
There's questions about food and
Yes.
food and PPEs and
And
testing
then they bring
capacity
Kazi
and,
Mtaani
Kazi
or Vijana
Mtaani.
Mtaani.
And there's building of hospitals within Nairobi County.
Eric, the
And
point
all.
is they are not totally deaf and they're not totally ignoring you. The fact that they're making inconsequential movements doesn't mean they're not moving. They're moving. Now, the problem also, if you approach the issue from a perspective of anger, even if there's any good being done, you won't see it.
You will not see it.
Yes.
Everything else just be come on.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's unfortunate, but
It's not what I wanted. There's
That
cash
kind of-
transfer, but you
There is cash transfer.
you will not call it cash transfer.
Yes,
You call
and
it-
now that's failure on part of the government to actually talk about it, that it is known. But this is something we've said on many occasions. The government does itself a great disservice by not telling the people what it's doing.
but not being open with the information. I think that's what also Martha Karua was talking about.
Thank you, Eric.
When you just keep withholding information, you
You allow us to make up our minds and to derive anything that we like. Even a straightforward case that could easily be explained with your silence will create dragons out of it.
Oh, absolutely, but you
and
can't
it wasn't even a fly.
Yeah.
you can't blame Kenyans or anybody for doing that. Because in the absence of that information, you create a vacuum. And that vacuum is the perfect breeding ground for speculation. And I'll begin to think that you are doing whatever, and you may not have been. And what you may have put in place would have been perfect, brilliant. But if you don't tell me, you have left room for me then to cook up my own stuff.
One of the explanations that our PS for housing gave yesterday, an example of when it's explained, you wonder, oh,
Beautiful.
So there's the other side
You
of the
wonder,
story.
so how come I
Beautiful.
didn't know this?
Why
Yes.
didn't I know this? Yeah.
Yeah, but why didn't you say it in the first place?
Exactly.
Yeah. Say it
Exactly.
louder and more openly. Good morning. It's now coming up to 9 o'clock. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We will begin the next hour with CT Muga's proverb of the day. Today's proverb is an African proverb as well. And then we will talk about the International Youth Day. Right? That's what it is. Yeah?
Yes.
Day of the Youth or Youth Day?
Oh, join.
Okay.
I beg.
It's 9 o'clock. Good morning.
Sugar and spice.
94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi. Traffic.
Right. Let's see what traffic looks like in most parts of the city. It's actually looking very good this morning. We don't have much to complain about. Mombasa Road, though, a little bit of hold up between Cabanas and General Motors. And then we know that Kiambu Road is a mess of all messes this morning. What a mess. You'll be able to get into the CBD after a while, but for now, no. Okay. Other parts of the city, it's looking pretty good. I don't think that you'll be stuck for too much longer. We'll be out of traffic hour in a short while. Not forget, Spice FM KE. You can tell us what you see in case you do see something.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, 2 minutes after 9, and the conversation continues right here in the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. So it's not today, it's actually tomorrow. The 12th day of August 2020 is the International Youth Day. What's that, Nduh?
International Youth Day. Well, seeing as we'll be celebrating that tomorrow, I think the thing that is of some import today, just before the celebration of International Youth Day tomorrow, is what is being called the National Meaningful Youth Engagement Report that has been launched in Kenya. So it's just looking at real engagement of young people across board in the country, taking in the vision of the country and saying that, well, the role of youth being the largest percentage of the population today is central, or rather is vital in attaining the country's vision. And now, saying that meaningful engagement of young people is central for the common vision as a country and achieving the outcomes and targets, for example, like the Big Four agenda and sustainable development goals. Without inclusion of the youth, without making sure that they're involved at all stages, then these big projects, for example, these visions, without them being a part of the, or rather being a percentage of the vision carriers or vision bearers, then you're doing the country a disservice and doing this larger percentage of people a disservice as well. So taking all of these things into consideration, this report was launched to say that, you know what, not doing so good in terms of youth inclusion in the country, and what are the steps that can be taken then to make sure that that inclusion takes place, that participation by youth takes place, that appreciation of the fact that the larger part of the population is made up of young people, and that they must be included in a lot of what goes on as stakeholders, as executors of initiatives, and also as beneficiaries of some of these research programs and initiatives that are led and that should be centered around young people. So this report has been launched and looking at some of the necessities when it comes to youth inclusion in the country.
So this is the Youth Advocacy Project, which developed a guide for improving meaningful youth engagement in policy making in Kenya. Meaningful youthful engagement. I mean, remember when we had a conversation here, I mean, we were talking about youth and the issue of the youth being included or occupying a seat at the table. Basically looking at the youth as the majority of the population in the country, and them occupying not just a seat, but occupying the majority of the seats at the table, probably, but also looking at them, the youth, harnessing the potential of the youth in being able to formulate policy, to understand policy, to shape policy. These are very many things. I wonder whether the youth as well are involved or are aware
that
these are very many things that they should be
the
taking up on. Let's speak to somebody who is a policy advocacy specialist, and this is Vania Kiboi. Good morning, Vania.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
A policy advocacy specialist. So
Right.
now that the word policy is there, and we've just talked about policy and the involvement of the youth in shaping policy, are the youth aware that they have a role in shaping policy?
They are, but not all of us are. So there are those of us who, so what we have is that, actually before we came up with this framework, we actually looked into the engagement of young people in decision making. And what we found was, it's not that young people don't want to get involved. By the time they are getting involved, it's towards the end of the process. So we are engaged to kind of rubber stamp the whole decision-making process, not from the beginning. And so what we are positing is that young people do want to get engaged or have conversations on matters that affect their lives. And really, when you say matters that affect our lives, it's everything, whether it's infrastructure, education, health, it's all of that. But the way the system is set up, the system is not set up to engage me where I'm at, right? So I'll give an example. If we're having a budget hearing, like a public hearing, sometimes in some counties with youth advocates that we work with, and we have like a huge network of over 3,000 youth from across the 47 counties, over 780 youth-led organizations. So these are vibrant young people who really want to get engaged. And in some counties, like one group in Kilifi told us, well, they'll let out the notice for the budget hearing or the consultations 2 days too. And it's a vast county. And not everyone will have heard about it. Or you even have a day job. So creating time, or that day, it's not even just having a day job that's salaried, but the day you don't work, you don't get paid. So the way the structure is set up, it kind of excludes young people from actually getting engaged. Not only that, the document is given on the day of the public hearing. And then only like 3 or 4 pre-selected people then get to make submissions. And you see, you have to make a submission about something you're aware of.
Yeah.
So what we are saying is, from the county integrated development plan, all the strategic plans that influence what's going to then be budgeted for, young people should have already started being engaged. And so meaningful youth engagement is not only having people aware, but it's also knowing that we can address the capacity gaps that exist for young people to actually understand, to meaningfully debate the issues, to communicate on the issues, to prioritize, to consult, and to negotiate.
How does meaningful youth engagement take place, and on what platforms?
Okay, a varied number of platforms. And so it could be anywhere from meeting, where like there's Boda guys sitting there, like waiting for clients. It could be on a market day. It could be around school institutions. It could be like the way we have court users committee, like community-led congregations, I would say, where conversations happen. And it could be on social media. And then what we have with our institutions where, like Parliament, where they call in for a memo, like we had recently with the reproductive health bill. Then they say, okay, give in your inputs. And then there's the physical one where we used to actually get opportunities to actually now go physically into the lawmaking institutions to do that. So meaningful youth engagement happens everywhere. And it's not only in terms of the lawmaking process itself. It's that, the way that some county governments are coming up with a public participation mandate, right? So meaningful youth engagement needs to exist in the governance infrastructure in any county government. That there is an office that is responsible for how we reach young people where they're at with the information they need.
But that sounds all well and good, Vania. It also sounds to me like the youth are waiting to be invited. The youth are waiting to be called upon to receive an invitation to attend or to participate in a conversation. How about the youth starting these conversations and then inviting the minority to participate? And saying, so this is what we have in mind, for instance, about CIDP for the next. We know that the next county integrated development plans are due to commence at this point. So already start formulating what you'd like to be included in the CIDP and then meet with the policymakers and say, insert this. As opposed to the other way around, where the policymaker invites you for this hearing or this sitting.
Yeah. So it's both ways. So I'll actually be bold enough to say this framework is not because necessarily members of parliament and policymakers came to young people. We went and sought out policymakers and told them, this is what we're hearing from young people. There is a gap between how young people even understand policymaking. We want to get involved, but we don't know. We don't even understand how motions are raised, how bills are raised, and when we get involved. So the framework in itself is a result of young people reaching out. The other thing is young people are not necessarily waiting for the formal processes. We're also pushing agendas. We are engaging county governments in all departments, whether it's youth, whether it's sports, whether it's reproductive health, to push agendas that on matters that affect us. So this is happening even at the CIDP level. What we are pushing for with this framework is for it to be institutionalized, because the issue with youth engagement right now is that sometimes it can be sporadic. And also, it's expensive. It's an expensive advocacy, can be an expensive engagement in that if you look at it, a lot of youth groups will often rely on donor funding, different kinds of projects. But if it's a government kind of threshold and requirement, it means that a grassroots, I would just say, like my cousin set up a foundation the other day in his village. His foundation, because it's self-funded, there are 10 of them. they don't need external funding to be able to reach the government. So we want the structures to be responsive to each other. That's what we're pushing for.
What would make this, I just want to go back to the point that you made earlier, whereby youth are not aware or are not heavily invested when it comes to things like knowing about, for example, how and what makes up a bill for it to be passed, or what you need to be able to do to agitate on certain levels. What needs to happen then for that to change?
I would say citizen education, because I know about it because I'm a lawyer by training. Right? But my friends who went to BCom or did engineering, and I'm just talking about the small percentage of us who have access to higher education, university education, don't know about that. So civic education in Kenya does not, the last time we had, I would say, vibrant civic education was when we were debating the 2010 constitution. And at that time, it was even in the interest of the government that people understand this is what the Katiba is proposing. So we need, whether it's KICD programs, whether it's a blurb on the media, on the radio, small snippets that push for the public on what the business of government is, and what the business of ministries are, and how bills get made. And we've pushed this motion. Some members of parliament that are members of KRP, like Keter, have pushed for that, have been able to use their social media platforms to educate and inform their, should I say, their subscribers or young people that follow
subscribers,
them.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Follow me and
follow
subscribe,
us,
kind of thing. Yes. Right. So the same way you have a followership at Spice FM, and you're using your platforms to educate people on whatever it is, whatever product that's there. Some members of parliament are using those platforms as well. So there's that need. And so the part of the intervention that are proposed with this framework would push for that. So, for instance, one of the interventions is an annual parliament that should be held within parliament. There's annual policy challenge or contest where young people from all over the country would write in to parliament as a way of agenda setting, because the policy making process starts all the way from agenda setting. But a lot of us as youth get engaged when almost at monitoring and evaluation after the policy was already passed, right? And so we are like, okay, so we don't even know where to get engaged, especially, and that happens often with budget making, because by the time we are going in, the budget estimates had already been set. We were pushing for a leadership dialogue series where there's also mentorship, so that young people can understand this is my job as an MP. And so, because another thing we also discovered is that for young MPs themselves, fresh-faced, right? Let's say it's your first term. It takes you a while when you get in to actually understand standing orders, pushing
But
pushers.
is it really only young people who have problems with standing orders? I would have thought that those who are a little long in the tooth would have even bigger problems.
But also, why are you going to familiarize yourself with the standing orders after you've been elected? As soon as you want that job, start studying them.
Okay, yeah, and that's a valid point. But at the way we are set up is get into office first and then figure yourself out when you're there.
Let me ask this question. I actually like what you're saying. It sounds wonderful, but this is now my question.
Right.
As youth, as young people, who, if you do that do you consider as possible collaborators who would help you further your agenda? And they don't necessarily have to be youth, because those are already paid up members, but people who are not within the ambit of the youth who could actually be useful collaborators.
Yes. So one of the things that we were looking out for was to hear from young people what they think meaningful youth engagement is and what models would work. And so initially, because you see the common understanding or narrative is that young people shun established norms, which then would make us think that automatically don't want to work with establishment, which is government and government structures, or whether it's public or the private institutions. But what we realize is young people actually want a partnership. They want to work with adults in whatever status. So whether it's community barazas, a health committee at the county level, health committee at the national level. So there are so many stakeholders and so many champions, especially at the county governments, whether it's directors of health or just coordinators. But we have, I would say, goodwill, especially at the sub-national level, to want to work with young people. But then there's a capacity gap, an institutional capacity gap of how to do this in a way that lives beyond the holder of that office. And that's what we want to see kind of inculcated within the operation.
It would be interesting to hear what you propose as ways of bridging that capacity gap, because you already have collaborators, but then these are some of the issues that are making you not be able to achieve what you'd like. Let's take a quick break at 18 minutes after 9. We're speaking with Vania Kiboi, policy advocacy specialist, talking about the involvement of the youth in policy making and in decision making. We want to take a quick break, and then we'll be back shortly after this with this conversation. Good morning.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. The weather
We're
with
looking at partly
Spice
cloudy
FM.
conditions in Nairobi, and we have a chance of rain in the afternoon with highs of 26. We'll wait and see how that opens up. Thunderstorms are forecasted for Njeri at highs of 24 and lows of 13. Nakuru will experience some rain in the afternoon with highs of 23 and lows of 12. In Eldoret, it's mostly cloudy at 16. A chance of rain there as well with highs of 21 and lows of 12. It's mostly sunny in Kisumu. It'll take us to highs of 27 and lows of 19. And in Kakamega, it's partly cloudy today at 20, highs of 26 and lows of 15. Light showers continue in Malindi at 24 degrees. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 24 with partly cloudy conditions in the afternoon. Mombasa is partly cloudy at 25 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 23 with a chance of rains later on. Let's take a look into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 22, highs of 27 and lows of 18 with showers in the afternoon. Dar es Salaam is partly cloudy at 25 degrees, highs of 29 and lows of 21. Looking into Joburg, where it's mostly sunny at 8 degrees, highs of 20 and lows of 7. Lagos is clear skies this morning at 24. It'll change later though, rainy conditions with highs of 29 and lows of 22. In Paris, as we look through Europe lastly this morning, it's sunny at 24 degrees, highs of 36 and lows of 23. London will see a high of 34 with rains in the afternoon, where it's currently partly cloudy at 22. And we'll round things up in New York, where it's clear skies at 27 degrees as they get into Tuesday morning, highs of 31 and lows of 24.
Spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice and
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
This
Nairobi.
is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. The conversation continues with Vania Kiboi, policy advocacy specialist. Vania, before we went into this break, you talked about the collaborators that you have, especially at the county level and the sub-county level, people who are willing to really engage meaningfully with the youth. But then you mentioned the gaps, and these are the capacity gaps. How would these be bridged?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so the interesting thing is that when it comes to other projects, non-state actor projects, we have meaningful youth engagement guidelines. So if you look online, you're going to find NDI has one, SIDA has one, but there isn't one to increase the capacity of people who work in government on how to work with young people. So not only did we want a situation where there is a mainstreaming in policy making and specifically parliament as to when we engage young people, we we're also pushing for that kind of training for capacity for members of parliament. But then that also needs to happen with government, which I hear your question, but I don't know that there's a structured way in which that is done. I know, like, for healthcare workers and with youth-friendly services, there's actual on-job training for healthcare workers who will eventually engage with young people. And that's something that the Ministry of Health has a curriculum on and is pushing. So I would think that an outfit like the Kenya School of Government would have something on youth programming and youth engagement and meaningful youth engagement in development initiatives as well, to make this a wholesome a kind of approach to MYE.
Please tell us about the successes you've had with this wonderful program, and tell us some of the pitfalls that you've had to encounter in your process.
Wow, okay. So we are a fast-growing youth network, and some of the successes have literally been in policy making at young people being engaged in policy making at the county level. So there are a few counties I can pick out, like Samburu County now have been discussing an anti-bidding policy, which is an agenda set. I hope you know about the bidding culture in Samburu and how that connects to early marriage and teen pregnancies. Mm-hmm. And so there is a policy right now that was just before Corona was about to go for public participation. They'd gone through a validation and now engaging public participation. A gender policy in Kakamega County, sexual and gender-based violence in Kakamega County, gender policy in Kilifi County. Now in Kilifi County, they're looking at menstrual health management policy, the youth-friendly service guidelines, like the integration of community health workers in Nairobi within the youth service guidelines. So young people are having, I would say, successes that are meaningful to them in their own context. And there's something else I remember, the technical working group. So what we found as a big success in the county, especially the county approach that we worked with, is that counties now have technical working groups within their ministries that have youth representation. And now these young people within the technical working groups are representing bigger coalitions. So just to mention quite a few. Mm. At the regional level, we have the Youth for UHC coalition, and this is young people from 43 countries in Africa advocating for governments to work with young people in policy making for universal health coverage, particularly so that sexual reproductive health can be at the center of it. Do you
see that there's a latching on to this idea? I mean, what I'm asking is these ideas, is the fire burning amongst youth in the country? We've seen many countries whereby a youth movement or youth agitation for youth then that bug seems to have bitten across the board. Do you see that in Kenya, where the majority of youth, for example, who make up this population are outside of the metropolis of Nairobi? Has it spread across into rural areas, and young people are actually appreciative of the fact that they are the majority and are actually ready to do something about it?
Yeah, young people are doing phenomenal things across the county, across the counties, I would say. And this is not just a Nairobi phenomenon. Mm-hmm. If I went to Busia, if I went to Siaya, and young people are using, I would say, approaches or methods known to them, whether it's art theater or community radio, to reach communities, depending on what it is you care about or what you want to push for. So I would say yes, but it's still limited because if I pick a county like, either it's Kisumu or even Samburu, there are areas that are very rural. And so reaching young people there sometimes is a bit more harder, reaching young people with information. So using community and local radio has been a key shift in it. But I remember what City asked about challenges, because I remember one time there was an engagement by a youth group in Kakamega, and they were looking to reach adolescents with accurate information on what kind of health services, where to access health services, and the time that they had programmed it was when they thought they would be home, like at 7 p.m. But because there's only one radio in this house, and 7 p.m. is the time that parents listen to news, so it meant that the messaging you had out for young people at that time was not reaching them. So we had to kind of reimagine, where else do young people hang out before they get home? That this messaging would have to be central. So then so youth programming, as I wanted to say in terms of challenges, is you have to keep listening and reworking the approach to be able to have it be responsive.
Okay, so as we round up that this discussion, so this report that was launched, what do you think then it's going to be able to achieve in terms of information passed to national level and also in the minds of young people? What do you think it's going to be able to achieve? Okay,
so what it will achieve is agenda setting for young people, agenda setting for policy making by young people, but as a structure that is adopted in the operation of Parliament, right? So it is a requirement. It will be an operation requirement for Parliament to even demonstrate how much of their agenda setting has been influenced from their public engagements, from the annual Youth Parliament, for instance, for the annual policy challenges, or from the Leadership Dialogue series, or particularly establishing thematic youth groups, thematic shadow committees constituted by young people that would shadow parliamentary committees. So what we will achieve is, we want to achieve an equal partnership in how young people how representative Parliament is on engaging policy issues affecting young people.
Right. Definitely important to have this conversation and to continue having this conversation, because we look at the statistics, we look at the numbers year in, year out, and we know that the majority of this population is young people, and they must be heavily invested in the future and appreciated by the leadership of the day. Vania Kibui, thank you so much for joining us this morning in the Situation Room and talking about this with us. And as we say, we keep the conversation going.
Yes. Thank you.
And we wish you and all the youth a happy International Youth Day. Actually, it's all of us.
Of us. I was going to say that.
We support the youth agenda. We support the conversations about the youth. So, happy Youth Day for tomorrow.
Thank you. You too.
Asante sana. This conversation continues on our social media handles: Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. It's now 9:30. Let's take a quick break. Take a look at what's happening on the roads. We're hoping that this morning Mombasa Road is flowing at least, and then we will shift gears a little bit.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Traffic.
It is flowing. It's not looking too terrible on Mombasa Road today. Not the headaches that you experienced yesterday. I think that's the last time we'll say that this morning. But okay. It looks good all the way to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Getting onto Uhuru Highway, though, as you're getting towards Westlands, going through town into Westlands, it shouldn't be too bad. It's moving along ever so slowly, but it is moving all the same. So, Eric, you'll be fine. Thika Road, also we had a problem right around Kiambu Road, but looking much better as you get then into the CBD via the Pangani Underpass. Apart from that, everywhere else looks very good. Officially out of traffic hour, and we'll do this again probably in the evening. If you see something that you need to let us know about, please do. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94
So as we
point.
talk about the youth and everything else pertaining to the youth, let's also talk about governance and come to Nairobi County Government. The Speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly has, given out a statement today where she has read a letter addressed to the President of the Republic of Kenya, in which she tendered her resignation as Speaker of the County Assembly of Nairobi.
Yep.
Before we go any further, let's just hear. This is what she said.
Sir, it gives me great pleasure to have served as the Speaker of Nairobi County Assembly from September 2017 when we finished the elections to date. We have seen tremendous change, but also challenges. With the coming in of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, I believe Nairobi will transform to a better capital city. Sir, notwithstanding, for the last few days, we have seen lots of conflict and even life-threatening incidents. I humbly tender my resignation, and for continuity of the institution, I appoint my deputy, the Honorable Speaker John Kamangu.
Now, you've just heard, the sir that she's referring to is the President of the Republic of Kenya.
No, not the governor.
Not the governor, not the leader of the majority or clerk of the assembly. So here's the thing. So she has resigned, and she says that I humbly tender my resignation to President Uhuru Kenyatta. The appointing authority is the people who elected her into the county assembly, who are the MCAs of Nairobi County. Now remember, we've had all these impeachment issues back and forth happening. Here's the issue though. Speaker Beatrice Elachi has said that she's tendered her resignation to the president, and she has appointed her deputy to continue serving. Why are you laughing, Siti?
I don't see, there's no anomaly here. In fact, it isn't even a Freudian slip. It is clear. As far as she's concerned, the appointing authority was the president of the country. Okay?
She owed her allegiance.
Yes, and so she's addressing, in her mind, in my mind, the right person. I would then venture to ask, if you're talking about MCAs in the county of Nairobi, which party has the majority of MCAs? And who are they likely to listen to? And if they have other parties with whom they have some collaboration, who are they likely to listen to? Oh, she has addressed it correctly. She knows exactly whom she's addressing it to. The bit that I find a little confusing is this appointing powers that she has to determine...
To transfer her powers to somebody else because I've quit.
Yeah, that's the bit that I don't quite get. But under the circumstances, I don't think it doesn't really matter. Because in her absence, the deputy was going to actually step up until an election takes place.
I think we should ask ourselves, what's the procedure for a speaker resigning from office? Or
How many
leaving
speakers have we
office?
seen resigning? Let's start there.
Not many. We have seen them being kicked out.
Those we've seen many.
Yeah.
And we know how they were kicked
But
out.
we also know how they get into office. But the law is very clear on how a speaker assumes office, how a speaker is identified, how a speaker is elected into office, and also how a speaker stops being a speaker. If you're kicked out by the people who
appointed
you there, who elected you, or if, okay, of course, all these are things, whether you're a criminal, you've been jailed, or you have all those others still, but also if you resign. Now, who do you address your resignation to?
All right. Eric, what are you discussing? What should be ideal, the ideal process that should be followed? I believe that's what you're talking about.
Yes,
that's what the law process.
The process.
Yes, and
There's
I'm telling
no
you,
ideal and any,
no,
the
she
process
has, she
is the
has
process.
followed the process. She didn't owe her allegiance to this process we're talking about. She knew if the president had not wanted me to be speaker, I wouldn't be speaker. So, whatever the president did to ensure I became speaker is why I'm a speaker. So, I am going to talk to the person who ensured I was speaker. Simple, straightforward. However, for purposes of discussion, let's look at what the procedures
supposed to be.
Yes. So, if the Speaker of the National Assembly, of the County Assembly, deems it fit to leave the office to which they have been elected.
What she's doing here is playing politics. Okay?
Wonderful, isn't it?
A very, very blatant one. And remember the way she's talked about, we've had issues in the management of this government, of this county government of Nairobi since 2017 when I assumed office. But now I'm very happy that we have the Nairobi Metropolitan Service that has come in, which I believe is going to deliver. Sir. Right? She is basically saying, all right, so I know, Mr. President, in fact, just by seeing you yesterday going to inspect projects that are being spearheaded by the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, I know where your heart is. So please, sir, I'm basically telling you that kama hapo ndio nataka tuende, I want you to appoint me there as something. This thing of Sonko's, I have left it. This is the direct thing that she is doing. She's basically just saying, all right, I have been fought by Sonko.
She's talking to the appointing authority.
I have received death threats. I have this and the other, and I have quit. I am ready for the next appointment, Mr. President.
But that is good.
Playing games.
Why
don't you just write the letter and say, you know what, I have resigned. Procedurally, I have resigned, and I'd also, at the same time, wish to thank the president for the support. And I say, I'm still a member of Jubilee. I still support the government's agenda in this city. I like what the president is doing in terms of, even bringing the Nairobi Metropolitan.
Eric,
what am I saying, sir? I have resigned to you.
Eric, that's what you would do if you're in her position.
Uh-huh.
Which clearly tells me you are not a politician.
I'm never going to be a speaker.
No. The way you speak, the way you think, no. That one, the job they might give you, let me see if it exists.
So immediately after she's done that, as we look for a job that suits me, the governor of the Nairobi City County releases a statement and says, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Nairobians, good morning. I have learned of the resignation of the Nairobi County Assembly Speaker, Beatrice Elachi, with shock and dismay. This move wouldn't have come at a worse time. Our county is in turmoil. Our people are suffering. Our city is in a disarray. Another crisis is what we all don't want at this time. Mm-hmm. But as Edward Murphy's law warns, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. We must play using the cards that fate has dealt us. Let me state for the record that I worked tirelessly to make sure that Honorable Elachi was able to come back to the county and continue discharging her duties as Speaker. This is based on my undiluted confidence in her ability and her strength. I have enjoyed a healthy working relationship with her, and anybody who might want to think or claim otherwise is an enemy of peace and that other word that you like, City? Progress. There is little doubt.
Prosperity came to mind.
The progress is
but progress can work, yes.
There is little doubt that the Nairobi County Assembly has lost a wonderful speaker, a capable servant, a robust warrior of justice, a dedicated defender of devolution, and an outstanding example of what women can achieve when accorded the requisite support. We shall miss her. I want to wish my sister, our dear Speaker, Honorable Elachi, all the best in her future pursuits. As a county, we must move on, and we shall do our best to move on and move forward in the best way possible. God bless you.
Oh my goodness, whip out the violins, why don't you? For crying out loud. Okay, I think the dramatics were a bit too much.
Politics,
there you go.
I give Sonko 10 out of 10.
Yeah, well, he did a good job in drawing out the dramatics.
That is how you go about it.
Theatrics is what we can call it. Right? Because, flying in the face of what was happening before and what you could clearly see, which was evident that the relations between the two could be likened to a lemon. Now in her absence, suddenly it's like somebody dies and you have lemon sour. Somebody dies and then you have all these wonderful things to say about them. Somebody leaves office and then okay.
I worked tirelessly to make sure that she comes back.
And to make sure that even while she was here, she was comfortable.
Yeah.
What sort of
I
image?
had confidence in her ability.
What image do you see as, if we were to sort of dramatize the governor writing this letter? Do you see him writing this letter with a great deal of sadness?
You see, Elachi herself insinuated, not just today, but even before, that her relationship with the governor were frosty at best. All right? And even now, she's saying, we've faced death threats in this assembly. We have gone through hell. just trying to deliver to the people of Nairobi. And that's why I'm just saying, thank you, Mr. President, but I quit. But the man that you're trying to blame is saying, oh, but she was really good.
Why would she leave?
I mean, at this time, the people of Nairobi do not want another crisis. Now, surely. But anyway, we must move on, and we shall move on.
If anything, it's probably breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
All right, she's gone. Let's move on in whatever capacity
Has
they'll
she
be able
really?
to move on. Has she?
I thought resignations need to be accepted first before you are officially resigned.
Okay, so in this case,
when you
who
resign to an
should
assembly, who is
Exactly.
accepting? There's going to be a vote of
She
saying
hasn't
yes.
resigned to the assembly. She's
Again.
resigned to the one who did not appoint her. He didn't appoint her.
And this person who's taking
I'm trying
over
to tell
as
you he
speaker.
appointed her.
Who, the president?
Yes. That's what I've been trying to say all along. I don't think you're getting this, are you?
So he's going to accept the resignation
I don't know. That's what I'm waiting to see.
and put
If
her
he-
in another position.
If he doesn't accept, then she still remains speaker. And the deputy can go back to his deputizing. If he accepts, then the deputy can now be acting speaker as we wait for the county to do what they do best. Look, does it really matter?
What? That she's left.
Yes.
Was she there?
It's a good question that you asked. Yes, I mean, does it really matter? What is this thing that's suddenly going to happen to the county government of Nairobi that didn't happen before? What are these changes that are going to come about as a result?
There's going to be harmony.
What sort of harmony are you talking about?
I don't know.
So you're saying that she's the one who brought about
You're
this
saying
harmony?
that she's the rebel rouser in the happenings of the Nairobi County government?
Well, at least the MCA who got sprayed with pepper spray will not be sprayed with pepper spray.
Well, the thing is this. She didn't go looking for him in his house to spray him with pepper spray. We know where he was sprayed with pepper spray, and we know where he had gone to. So
She, the Mafirifiri commercial.
sorry.
Yes.
forgive me.
Yeah.
Yes, she.
Let's pick this call. This is Karaoke calling in from Wakulima Market in Nakuru. Good morning, Karaoke.
Good morning to you guys.
How are you?
Morning.
Morning, fine, thank you.
I want to contribute towards that debate because, City sometimes don't play games with Kenyans, my friend. He was not even elected by the president. Remember that? He was elected by the MCA. I sometimes wonder. In fact, it is very bad for you, City, to mention anything to do with that institution of the president. This guy has been violating the law every now and then. So now you won't tell me today in Nakuru here, if the speaker happens to resign, you said his resignation to the president. That's what you want to tell us.
No,
just because he's one way or the other.
the president doesn't come into the Nakuru equation at that level for the simple reason, Mr. Karaoke, that
Okay,
Nakuru is not Nairobi.
And my friend, the law of county government doesn't matter whether it is Nairobi, which is the capital city, or Nakuru or Kisumu, my friend. City. There is very, very clear according to the 2010 constitution, my friend. He does not supposed to.
So on paper, Karaoke, the county assembly elected the speaker. Okay.
Of course.
But also, let's look at the politics of Nairobi in the last 2 years. When we have
Forget
seen
about politics.
leadership, majority leader, majority whip, minority whip, and when there's all this movement, where do the instructions come from? The instructions come from Jubilee Party headquarters.
Come on, my friend. Okay then.
Surely.
And who is the party leader of Jubilee?
Don't forget about the president being the party leader. You want to tell me now today if the speaker has been impeached here in Nakuru because he is a party leader who come in and in fact start influencing the MCA to do what he wants.
If the
Is
party
it
leader,
an idea that
My
is so
friend,
foreign?
if
Can
the
I
party
tell you
leader
something?
chooses to,
Can I tell you something? Here in Nakuru, when the current speaker of the county assembly was elected, the MCA were, in one way or the other, they were given some passes in order to elect the person proposed by the president. But unfortunately, they refused and elected the current speaker of the National Assembly. This is something I know for sure.
Okay, let me give
So
you another
you understand?
example. But we
So
know
don't tell me about the party leader.
we are dealing with two things. We are dealing with the ideal, where I stand on the ideal side. I think Kariuki has gone. Where I stand on the ideal side. Ideally, yes, the county assembly elects. The speaker should resign to the county assembly procedurally. And if her letter is not addressed to the person who it should be addressed to, then we're going to have a problem. Because legally she has not resigned. If she has just written a letter to His Excellency the President, she has not resigned. But the issue of who holds the power, ask Kithure Kindiki today, who had elected him as Deputy Speaker of the Senate? Who removed him as Deputy Speaker of the Senate? Is it the senators?
You see, at the end of the day, the question, what Karaoke is saying is actually true.
It's true.
If we were to go by our laws and by our constitution, Karaoke is 100% right. But that's not what I was saying. I was simply saying allegiance. Who do you think she owes her allegiance and her job to?
Yeah.
It's not complicated.
And it's beyond who she owes it to, who she believes she owes it to, by the way.
Unfortunately
is up on
for the
top.
people of Nairobi, this is your speaker showing you that I actually never
don't
felt
regard
beholden to the assembly. Johnson Odero in Kaha West. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good, sir.
Yes, so the speaker has resigned.
Yes.
Your view on this?
I think when you're resigning, you should address the appointing authority. In this case, she has clearly cited whom she's resigning to. And the appointing authority clearly is not the county assembly, what my brother Kariuki was saying earlier. So if she was to address the assembly, actually, she should have put it clear to the county assembly that I'm resigning because of ABC. And indeed, she has not actually put it. And
so,
also,
has she resigned or not?
on paper, no. But to the appointing authority, yes. That is my own way of view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Johnson. We want to take more calls, 0719-012-600. Speaker of the County Assembly of Nairobi, Beatrice Elachi, says, I have resigned. I've sent my resignation to the president. And the question is, has she resigned? Or has she just told the president, I am willing to leave this particular position? She was elected by the MCAs of Nairobi. What does this also tell you about how she views the people that she was leading in the county assembly? None of you have any powers to tell me anything. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back. 0719-012-600. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation at 10 minutes to 10.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Spice and everything nice. All right. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
The phone lines at 9 minutes to 10 o'clock. So we've got Trevor calling in from Nairobi. Good morning, Trevor.
Morning, how are you?
We're fine, thank you.
Just chime in on the conversation today about this.
The resignation.
Do you call it a resignation or almost like we don't even know if it's a resignation as of yet, because somebody has to accept it. I think this is just a game of political checkers, because if just look at the record time in which the governor allegedly responded to the resignation. It's something that was in the works. I have immense respect for the governor, but I really have doubt that he penned that thing himself in that time, because the diction is just a bit, very well orchestrated. If I can say that. So when Elachi was resigning, for me, I feel with everything that has happened, she's just publicly, in a very subtle way, showing contempt to the county government that appointed her. The MCAs are the one who appointed her, and the ones who are now bringing all manner of chaos to her doorstep. So she steps out and just goes and tells the MCAs, listen, I'm going to shove this to your face. You want me to resign, but I will, talk to the president and then just let you handle your nonsense up at Chini. And go
I'll talk to the one above you.
Now, talk to the one above you who actually is now running the county through NMS.
Okay. Thank you very much, Trevor. Geoffrey in Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning, buddies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
We are fine, thank you. Has she resigned or has she not?
On my side, I'll appreciate the fact that Elachi has resigned. Despite her addressing the president, it was just a confirmation that she got there by the influence of the president. And that's why she did not serve well and meet the needs, or she never agreed with the MCAs around because she was imposed to them in the first place.
Okay.
So it was right for her to make that decision and address it to the president, because you know that on the other side of the leadership, she was not better placed of it.
Thank you. George in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning to you guys. How are you?
We are good.
Thank you.
Now I want to commend Elachi for what she did. Actually, if I can put myself in her shoes, of course, that's the best way to go. Yes, and in fact, it's just a confirmation. Of course, it's communicating volume. It's communicating a lot of sense to the wananchi outside there of what is actually taking place in Nairobi. You can, I think you've not forgotten what actually happened some years ago when they actually resigned.
Yep.
And it is the same thing taking place in the same county. So for those people who are actually brilliant, those people who have the ability to gauge and to compare notes, they can understand what is taking place in Nairobi and what Nairobi County actually is.
We can all see.
Yes.
Thank you, George. Brian in Nakuru.
Morning.
How are you?
Yeah. We were talking about Beatrice Elachi.
Yep.
And also Muraze resigned, and currently is the Jubilee Party deputy chairman.
Yep.
He's the chairman actually, and he had resigned, and he had sent the letter.
He said publicly that he has even quit the party.
Yeah, he even made a public spectacle among us. And that's the same thing that is happening here with Elachi. She's addressing the wrong person and doing the wrong thing at the wrong place. And Sonko is my boy. I really love Sonko, but that guy has messed Nairobi.
So you talk about Elachi and she has not performed. She has not.
All along you were talking about Sonko.
Sonko.
Okay.
So comments coming in. Let's look at some of these comments on social media. Why are you splitting hairs about Elachi's resignation? Elachi has merely said that the deputy speaker will act until a new speaker is elected. A speaker's job is entirely political. So Eric's point that Elachi is playing politics is mute. So now, how is my point mute?
Maybe moot.
Moot, I think, would be more.
Okay.
Is more appropriate.
All right.
Okay.
So let's go with moot. How is my point moot?
Well, I don't think so, because if it's a political appointment and she's playing politics, then she's doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing. You're spot on, Eric.
But even more significantly, consider Sonko seems to invite something that other governors don't invite. Speakers are removed. The governor of Nairobi had his deputy resigning.
Yep.
Unheard of. Now you have the speaker resigning. Unheard of.
Yep.
So, it tells you something, doesn't it?
About the governor.
Well, yes.
Staying power.
Put it this way. Everyone who we are referring to is a member of the Jubilee coalition, or the Jubilee government, or the Jubilee party. They're not from some other party. So if it's disagreements, it's disagreements showing itself within the party itself. Yes. But the person who keeps coming out strong and standing out strong or tall, no pun intended, is the governor. But Eric, you were going to say something.
No.
Oh, you weren't?
No.
Okay. I imagined you were.
No, Eric was basking in the glory of his point, having actually not then been moot. But the thing is, I as we look at this now, obviously, because you resign to the body or the individual then who has given you the job. Now, what we can be talking about here is obviously she's sending a message with this resignation, and anybody who's not been able to see the message then maybe needs to open their eyes just a smidgen. She's said something, and to whom her allegiance is to whom she has made this resignation.
Why don't we just, bite the bullet and face this thing and just say dissolve the Nairobi County
Assembly,
government.
Government as a whole.
Yes. This whole back and forth, the NMS is working. The NMS is not able to get
Access funds.
Funding from the county assembly. The speaker is in office. The speaker is not in office. The speaker is resigning. She has not resigned properly. What's all this? So you just get to that point faster if that's where we are heading.
How do you dissolve a democratically elected government?
By people petitioning for the dissolution.
You see the people of Nairobi petitioning for the dissolution.
The people of Nairobi have just said,
whatever.
No, Eric, the contrary may also be true.
That they're happy with how things are going.
No, they're happy with Sonko. They like Sonko.
So let's dissolve it so that they can elect Sonko now again clean with a better team.
But I thought they elected him clean before.
Yeah, you see now he has people who are fighting him left, right and center.
This is politics.
Just in case you people in State House thought that we are not the ones who gave Sonko this seat.
Let's do it again.
Dissolve.
Let's
come
do it
back
again so that you
us.
can know that we are not the ones who give him this seat.
Okay, coming to the end of the show, remind us today's proverb.
Today's proverb, I think, is one of those proverbs that are so self-explanatory. You actually wonder the genius behind it. When deeds speak, words are nothing. Alachi has shown us deeds.
With her words.
With her words. So anything that anybody else wants to say is nothing.
Okay. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And you'll be with Monique from 3 to 7 and the adults in the room from 7 to 10. Good morning. It's now 10 a.m.
Spice up your life